I know some of you wouldn't believe me, but if a lie asked me good friend Mackie, it was a big lying competition to see who they will crown as lying champion. Liars from all parts of the West Indies, big shot liars from all them foreign countries. From a feel about 1,000 or so entry in 2 days, he boiled down and leave just 3. I had me eye on liar the lion, because I know he does come with some good ones. But they had a younger fella named T-Bone, come from some village there in Tobago. He say his father is Tobago's best fisherman. Catch a fish a mile wide, 80 feet in span. He had to tie it on the boat and swim back to land to get his brother Eric to give him a hand. You hear lie? That is lie. Lie? You hear lie? Teacher Percy say if you tell a lie, you're going to hell as soon as you die. Why, sir? Check it out. Liar the lion, he laughed till he sweat. He said, Mr. Depot, ain't say nothing yet. If you really want to hear about fishing, let me blow your mind. Now listen to something. When you're talking about fish, you just hit the spot. I was hoping you did believe it or not. The fish your father caught, to you it was great, but it's them small fish my father does use for bait. Lion went ahead on points in the show, completely eliminated Mr. Depot. The next man to beat was really outrageous. He asked the judges if he could lie first. The judges asked Lion. The Lion agreed. Say any topic we'll pick is alright with me. He outrageous, I strong. Let we meet head on. And when we done, see who had fit to wear the crown. You hear lie? That is lie. Lie? You hear lie? Teacher Percy say if you tell a lie, you're going to hell as soon as you die. Let it go. Let it go. Shook it up. Yep. The outrageous say that he knew a tailor comes to make him suit. The man is the master. If you show him a man coming round a corner, he could make him a suit and don't even measure. A talking about suit, sitting down correct, expertly made and fitting perfect. He used to sew for Shakespeare, make suit for Hamlet, and up to this day yet make a mistake yet. You know the crowd went wild, they couldn't cool down. I said liar, the lion losing the crown. The judges brought the crowd back to order and asked the lion to lie about a tailor. He said, my man is the best. Rolf is his name. Cutting cloth, making suit is his game. Don't show him the man, my tailor is class. Just show him the corner where the fella pass, and he gon' make a suit. That is tailor. You hear lie? King liar. Teacher Percy say if you tell a lie, you're going to hell as soon as you die. Whip it up. Pick it up. Let it go. Move it up. Let it go. Teacher Percy say if you tell a lie, you're going to hell as soon as you die. Teacher Percy say if you tell a lie, you're going to hell as soon as you die.
Time of peace, when this dwelling was yours. Well, good evening to all of you joining us on the Marcia Week show this Monday, March the 17th. The year is marching on and it's going quickly. And my goodness, what an what a what an eventful week we had over the past week. And I have just sat and smiled through the entire process for a number of reasons, and some of them I will touch on tonight as I have the first few minutes of the program. To share some of my thoughts with you. Some you might have heard from several of our panelists already, but if that's the case, then it just shows the commonality of thinking and fundamentally truth. Because once truth is there, it doesn't matter who says it; it remains truth. So when it's expressed by different people, it's truth. Okay, so that's going to be some of the things I'm going to be sharing with you this evening. As we begin, however, let me take the opportunity to welcome all of you of the loyal opposition that are joining us tonight. It's a pleasure to have you with us tonight, and I want to not forget our national pledge. We have just shared our national anthem, but as you know, is my custom, I like to share the national pledge as a reminder of where our commitment and our dedication lays as it relates to us as civil society, as government, and as the people of the country, to the island of Barbados and to our flag. So join with me as we repeat the national pledge. I pledge allegiance to my country, Barbados, and to my flag, to uphold and defend their honor, and by my living to do credit to my nation wherever I go. I must confess that in listening to the past several days since the budget, as a matter of fact, since the estimates, I believe that many, if not all, of our parliamentarians need to revisit that pledge and realize that their fundamental primary responsibility is to Barbados and to its flag, to our sovereignty. That is their primary responsibility. All right. But before I get into that, let me take the opportunity to welcome some of you by name. And if I don't call your name, please forgive me. All right. But it's good to have all of you joining us tonight. Erskine Watson, I see you're with us. And of course, Marcia. Marcia, we went straight into the national anthem tonight, so you didn't have to remind me of it. Judy, it's good to have you. Vernon, a pleasure to have you back with us tonight. Queen Bee, I hope I hope you can get the other bees joining you, Queen Bee, with a sense of us responsibility and accountability. Some of these things we'll touch on later on. Wendy Ford Griffith, a pleasure to have you. Taroni Hall, great. You're always so faithful to be here. Nat Grant, great to have you with us again. Mac Bolan and Mystic Angel, Flo Joe Maloney. Of course, you know, Flo, I remember that great athlete in the United States that remind me so much in terms of the name. Bonnie Spencer, Monique Ince, a pleasure to have you with us tonight. Mildred Ben, Jacqueline Aline, Beverly Prescott, my goodness, Thelma Yearwood, Aaron Hunt. I'm looking for one particular name. I haven't seen it appear yet. Jefferson Sobers, Cami and Callie B, thank you for joining us tonight. Without you, we couldn't have a show. All 424 of you and Bill. Remember, share, 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 share. All right. Judy, I mentioned you already, Hugh Shepard and Rollinston Broom, Michael Harewood, V. Hoy, Marcy. I'm rolling through some of these so quickly, and I know that Dave is going to help put some of you up there, even if I don't call your name. Erskine Watson, pleasure to have you with us tonight. And right at the very start, let me first of all deal with the advertisement. Dave, if you could put it up for me, please, concerning the upcoming march on the 22nd. That would be, I believe, Saturday, the 22nd of March. March on March, the 22nd of March. Okay, and that is upcoming. It's a love march. It's a fight to preserve Barbados's heritage and coastlands. And I dare say, it's going to be a lot more than just for that, because it would appear to me the recklessness, abandonment of this administration as it relates to our country's national interests is going to motivate some of us to join. So this coming Saturday, March the 22nd, the location will be commencing at 10 a.m. at the Folkestone beach, and we will be marching to the Holetown Civic Center. All right, Holetown Civic Center. And we are going to be going there, 12 noon Heritage Celebration concert. And we want to invite all of you to join us this coming Saturday at 10 o'clock in the morning on this is in St. James now, from Folkestone Park, Folkestone Beach to the Holetown Civic Center. I want to get that right out the blocks right away. We'll be touching on this during the night. Now, a few of my comments to you this evening. First of all, I want to give the leader of the opposition a few encouraging words. I heard him make comment, and he has on more than one occasion, speaking about he may be alone in Parliament, but he is not lonely. And I want to say to you tonight, sir, if you're watching the Marcia Week show, that there was an Assyrian army, a big battalion that was sent to arrest the prophet Elisha in the book of 2 Kings chapter 6. And in 2 Kings chapter 6, and you would expect me at some point in time as a preacher to reference the Bible, okay? So get used to it. So 2 Kings chapter 6, when this army arrived, and his Gehazi, the servant of Elijah, went out the door, and he saw this massive army. They sent this big army for one man. One man. Does that sound familiar to you all? One man. And so he ran back inside the house, back inside the tent really quick. And he said, oh my God, he said, Elijah, we got a problem. We got a ton of people out there that come for you, boy. We in trouble. Well, Elijah didn't say a word. Elijah says, listen, man, don't be afraid. Those who are with us are more than those who are with them. I want to give you this word tonight, Mr. Thorne, leader of the opposition, the loyal opposition and your opposition party. Elijah prayed, open his eyes, Lord, so that he may see. Then the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and when he looked and saw the hills full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. Government, be very careful how you push back at this lone man in Parliament. Those who are for him are more than those who are against him. And I want to remind the government that the Titanic was not sunk by the 1/10 of the iceberg the captain saw. It was sunk by the 9/10. He did not see. Do not assess your position on the basis of your supporters, because I can guarantee you 9/10 of the electorate of this country are the people who are going to sink your ship. I want to remind you of that. All right, so let me get that out of the way. Now, we have heard a lot of things that have transpired over this last several days. Of course, the leader of the opposition shared a marathon 10-hour delivery and presentation. And some people took umbrage to that and ridiculed and laughed and scorned him on that context. But I want to say that when you consider the majority of 28 members, because the speaker cannot speak, 28 members of the House, each given at least 30 minutes, I believe the Prime Minister has a longer time to speak, that comes down to approximately, by my calculation, 14 hours. So that the opposition, if we had a proper balance, we would have had some number of hours, 14 plus hours of presentations in the House of Assembly in Parliament. And so for the leader of the opposition to speak for 10 hours, being the sole person of the opposition, I would have to say that for those 10 hours, he kept us glued to what he was saying. Now, you normally tend to lose an audience after 30 to 45 minutes. But I must say that as the leader of the opposition went through systematically every area of governance in this country, one could not but help themselves to remain focused and glued to what he was saying. And that in itself lends some discredit to the government. And I want to say this. The displays that I observed in Parliament, listen, folks, this is 2025. Governance and representation is no longer accepted in this country with all of the innuendos and nasty, stinking conduct and behavior that is seen in Parliament, which the public of Barbados are observing. And then you have the audacity to come out and talk to the young people of our country concerning how they conduct themselves and how they deal with opposition. You are not in a moral position to address the youth of this country on any matter concerning how they handle conflict, because by your own demonstration, you don't know how to handle it either. And I was not disappointed. I wasn't surprised. I must tell you the truth. And I hope to God that that presentation made by the majority of them does not go global. I hope it is not on YouTube. I hope the rest of the world does not see the disgusting display, particularly of one individual who sought to malign the leader of the opposition in what I consider an unparliamentary conduct and speech, which the speaker and the chair should have stopped him and corrected his nasty references concerning going and changing his sex and all that foolishness. People did not elect you to the House of Assembly to carry on that kind of disrespectful, disgusting dialogue and conduct. We invested in you to represent us in the Parliament, not to represent the government, to represent the people. That is who every single one of you was elected to the members of Parliament and the Senate. You weren't elected. Senate wasn't elected, selected. You are placed there. You are placed there to represent the people, not your interests, not your focus, not your assessment or anything of that matter. You are put there to represent the people of this country. And I must say, to date, you have done a despicable job, a disgusting job when it comes to that matter. So, moving on and quickly. I heard comments made relative to matters. I have nothing to hide and corruption and whatnot. Let me touch on a few of these things quickly. I've only got 10 more minutes. You campaigned on two fundamental points: transparency and accountability. And in my books, anytime people have to consistently ask questions of you, you are not being either transparent or accountable. Let me be clear. Don't get up in Parliament and pontificate about you have nothing to hide. I heard a verse quoted on 2 occasions from the Bible by an outstanding member of Parliament. And this is what that individual had to say. She quoted from 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 2. And she referenced it twice at least. And this is what it says: rather, we have renounced secret and shameful ways. We do not use deception. I will stick a pin there. It goes on to say other things. Well, that cannot be your quote. It does not. You are not in a morally justifiable position to quote that verse, because you have not renounced secret and shameful ways, and you have used deception. How can I say that? All right, let's look first of all at the Holetown debacle. We were told at the beginning that you were negotiating. Then in through the back door came the decision, which we are now told was already made long before we even began to engage the matters of where we stood on the aspect. Then we have this matter to do with hope. And I listened to the minister. I was shocked when I heard the minister talk about there's no corruption. And listen, as long as the Public Accounts Committee has not been able to meet and go through the financial details of government, and the Accountant General, if that's what he is, the Auditor General, sorry, has not been able to come to the people of Barbados and give us a description of government's funding, you are corrupt. If you don't like it, lump it. That's the problem you'll have to deal with, because the Public Accounts Committee, with which the leader of the opposition is supposed to be chairing, if you wanted to deal with all of these issues that we heard emerging from the last several days, all you had to do was to let the PAC meet, investigate Hope, investigate the sewage matter, investigate the monies to do with the cricket and the monies borrowed. And I come into that, the monies borrowed with regards to the repairs of roads. That's all you have to do. Excuse me. Don't let me get too excited. That's all you have to do. Answer the questions. All you have to do is let the PAC meet. Let's hear what the Auditor General has to say. Let us scrutinize for ourselves. You are accountable to the people of this country. You can't get into Parliament and get on like you own this country. You don't. You do not own the lands of this country. The people do. The land is not at your disposal to dispose of at your whim and fancy. You are accountable to the people of this country. And before you make major decisions, you should be having a discussion and dialogue. If you want to call it a referendum, I don't care what you do. Talk to the people. And you have failed to do that. That tells me that some things are questionable, and if they're being hidden, then it is possible corruption, bribery, all these kind of things are engaged in the matter. You say we have nothing to hide, but the Minister of Housing admitted that no environmental impact study was done on the Project Hope. How in the name of God are you going to do a development and you are spending $60 million in development and you have not even done an environmental impact study? I know people who are doing a little development with 8 apartments have to do an environmental impact study. They have to present it as a part of their town planning permissions to get their town planning permission. And you are going to seriously get in the face of people and tell them there's no corruption, there's no this, there's no that, we are moving ahead. This is a matter under investigation and you are daring to move ahead with it. You should be removed from office forthwith. All of you should be fired forthwith. You shouldn't even have to be fired. You should be decent enough to resign. All of you should be decent enough to resign. No corruption, no environmental impact study that has been done. We don't know anything about the figures. Where's the 60 million? How has it been spent? These are questions that are raising. Let me get to another one quick. Prime Minister says that she has only spent about 1.4 million, I think was the figure. She quoted 93 trips. I am going to say this tonight, and you can take it to the bank. Okay? There is no way under the sun traveling on 93 trips, if you're using a private jet, that you're going to spend $1.4 million. That equates to about 15,000 Barbados dollars a trip. Well, I have been involved in having someone come to this country by private jet, and I can tell you 15,000 US dollars. You got to pay for it as it sits at the airport. You got to pay for it for landing. You got to pay for it for refueling. There are costs involved in the matter. I don't know any airport in the world that is going to be any different. So to tell me 93 trips at 1.4 million is not accurate, because the Prime Minister does not travel alone. So her travel, and I hope Maxine is going to be on tonight, and I believe Maxine made this point. Now, I am not a former Minister of Foreign Affairs. I don't know all the details of it, but it's common sense. I mean, good God, man. I get on a flight to go from here to Cayman Islands. It's costing me $1,500 in some instances, based on when you book the flight, 2,000 Barbados dollars 2,000 Barbados or 2,000 US, nearly 2,000 US dollars. That's just going to Cayman. And me, ordinary guy flying economy, based on when you book the reservation. And you are going to tell me that you had 93 trips only costing $1.4 million? I do not believe it. I do not believe it. All right. And let me move quickly because my time has flown by so fast. I just have a couple more minutes, and I want to touch on a couple of things. Let me touch quickly on this recent fiasco with this land that has been gifted to the African Bank on the corner of Jemmott'S Lane and Bay Street. Listen, the land, Madam Prime Minister and government, does not belong to you. None of the land in this country belongs to any of you. No 30, not even leader of the opposition, does not belong to you. It is vested in the people of this country. And we always hear people talking about how we want the people of the country to own a piece of the rock. Well, you, at the rate things are going and the rate you're disposing, particularly of the precious coastland properties, it is going to be left for us to see if we will own anything left in this country. But I want to know how much the African Bank is investing into the country. I want to know whose profit, when the hotel starts to make money, who does that go to? When the conference center is making money, who does that go to? I want to see the terms and conditions. I am a Barbadian citizen who voted in the election, and it is your responsibility to answer my questions. Don't get upset and annoyed, or I will fire you. It's as simple as that. You have to answer the questions. Where is the money coming from? What are the terms and conditions of your gift? And why, if you can gift the African Bank, obviously there must be some investment they're making. We understand that. Where is that money going? What is it going to be used for? What is the plan? What is the vision? These are things you have to answer. And these are questions that were not answered in the budget, which is why we are where we are today. The land was gifted, but I want to know what is going to be the benefit to Barbadians. Well, my few minutes has transpired, and I haven't even got through 50% of the questions that I have, but I want to welcome my first guest to the show this evening, somebody I have always enjoyed sharing my Mondays with, and that is Mrs. Rose Corbin. Rose, I want to welcome you. I know your camera is not on. I am used to seeing your wonderful face that is always an inspiration to all of us. But we want to welcome you tonight to the Marcy Week Show. And we know that we are in for another treat. So good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Reverend Ferdinand. Always a pleasure to be with you. And I really miss our Monday nights together because of various scheduling in the program. But I really enjoy being with you. I ask your permission, please, to be excused tonight from on camera, but
that's okay.
I am battling. I'm not at my best, let's say that. And but
that's all right. That's all right.
I shall use thank you and to our faithful listeners, participants. You're more than listeners, you're participants. You are loyal sons and daughters of firm craftsmen of her faith. I say thank you for joining us and good evening. I've got 15 minutes, so I'm going to squash things in. And when prompted for a topic for this evening, I said quest for national consciousness. I know this is Nigel's forte, but for me, it is kind of tongue-in-cheek, but at the same time, Reverend Ferdinand, it is serious. And I chose the term national consciousness because this was peppered throughout the wrap-up. Remember the leader of the opposition said in the press conference today, if you heard it, that he anticipated that they were going to come in at the latest hour in the wrap up and pass the resolution for the if I remember correctly, passed the resolution concerning the African Import-Export Bank. And it did happen in wrap up, but for it to be presented, the leader of the opposition got another closing blistering from them and from Ryan Strong, particularly in wrapping up. And he was very confident, one would say, in saying that the leader of the opposition doesn't care about anything African. He doesn't care about blackness. And I am to keep cautioning these I don't want to say it, but you know, there's an expression that Bajans use when you just arrive and you come ashore, and they use the name of a boy beginning with J, right? Work it out. And these I was going to say fly by night politicians and MPs who still green must do their research, because I am not here to defend Ralph Thorne, Mr. Thorne, but do they know that it's Mr. Thorne that started Dancing Africa, the award-winning dance group, dance organization, dance theater, that won many national awards, represented Barbados overseas under the tutelage of Mr. Thorne. He was instrumental in setting up Dancing Africa, that when there was no other dance group in Barbados, Dancing Africa was the one that showcased all things African, all things Barbadian through the expression of the creatives and dance. So it is lying and it is inappropriate to speak of in such a manner concerning Mr. Thorne, that he knows nothing, he doesn't appreciate Africa just because he wants to retain QC. He retains QC because, as he says, we don't have a constitution beyond the British Constitution at that time. So if he wants to retain QC, don't be disparaging at his choice. Look at how you got MP in the first place. And so I listened to his summing up, his reasons, the reasons they are putting out there for this alliance and this association with the African Export-Import Bank. And they all was saying it is to foster national consciousness. Do we need an African Export-Import Bank to whom you are giving crown land, prime crown land that I think it was Sir Henry Fraser always said that it could be fixed up and it could become an annex to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, and at the same time retaining the heritage in buildings, buildings of the past, historical buildings. But no, they are seeing that this association, this relationship with the African Export-Import Bank is a strategy to foster national consciousness. I don't know if we don't have national consciousness. I do, and I'm well in my 60s. high 60s. But here they're saying that this approach, this relationship is to promote national consciousness. And what does not, and I will look at it another time in the interest of time here. A national consciousness is a shared sense of national identity. I'm sorry, don't have a PowerPoint. And a shared understanding that a people group shares a common ethnic, linguistic, cultural background. And listen to the second part, Reverend Ferdy. Historically, a rise in national consciousness has been the first step towards creating a nation. So before they came on the stream, before they were propelled into the limelight in May 2018 and up to now, was Barbados not a nation? National consciousness seeks is the first step. I read it here, I research, historically has been the first step in creating a nation. So do we need this strategy, this approach to become a nation? Are they recreating us? Are they deconstructing what exists and what we know to create a novo nation, a new nation that is through this national consciousness? And he referred to that time and time again to rationalize and justify what they are doing and at JEMMOTT'S Lane and the giveaways to the African Export-Import Bank. Now, I want to pull up this section here, and this man here, he does a lot of swearing. I'm not saying bad words swearing, but you know, everybody came into the house from that side quoting the scriptures. Kirk the Turk came in quoting, "Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O God, my strength and my redeemer." And before he said the ER in redeemer, he forgot that quotation and started to lambaste the leader of opposition. They made a mockery of God in that house, a mockery of God. And I asked my husband, would they have done it to the Quran? Would they have done it to our Muslims, brothers and sisters? But I leave it there. They have no respect for the things of God. Now let us look, as I said, Mr. Strong likes to say, "I swear." But look, Reverend Ferdy, in this clip here, what he was swearing on. Dave, could you show it, please?
You know, the honourable member was nowhere to be found on the premises of Parliament, sir. There's a history, sir, of the absence of the honourable leader of the opposition from the premises of Parliament whenever anybody from Africa, sir, visits this place, sir. A King's Council does not want to associate with anybody, sir, from Africa. But this Barbados Labour Party, sir, we follow on, because this is how we're going to change the future, sir. He spoke about Holetown, and I swear to God, sir, I swear to God, I am sorry that it is the resolution here for JEMMOTT'S Lane. It should be the resolution that we're taking for Holetown, sir, to give to the African Eximbank, because the honourable member needs to understand, sir, he needs to understand that that investment in Barbados, sir, is not only for white foreigners, sir. It's not only for white foreigners. He's ashamed, sir, of himself.
Stop there, please, Dave.
Of himself.
You hear that? Thank you, Dave. You hear that, Reverend Ferdy, and our audience, our listeners, our participants? He said that he swear to God, Father, forgive me for for repeating what he says, that the resolution was not for Holetown and giving Holetown to the African Export-Import Bank. You hear that?
Yes,
So
he
was
said it.
somewhere in their discussion, in their heads, in their reasoning, to give whomever prime beachfront land. Now, Kimar today released a video, and you could listen to it, saying that beachfront land that included the hospital, the old hospital, the eye hospital, and the Savi were to come as a package. Now, Ryan Strachan is here saying in the House of Assembly, he was swearing that it should have been Holetown.
Holetown.
And so you see the mix-up that is going on, Holetown, and not JEMMOTT'S Lane. Moving on smartly too, there was another, and I'm wrapping up now. You notice in the same clip, he said that it is this consciousness that they're aiming at. It's to show the young Black youth and to show Black Barbadian that Barbados is not only for white foreigners. Now, you know who down by George River is occupied by? It's occupied by.
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Is that not a white foreigner?
As is all the property on St. James. You can go ahead.
This was I don't know if it was his exuberance, but I do not buy the rationale, neither which is the reason, the theorizing for giving prime land to the African Export-Import Bank, saying that it will promote, it will engender, it will foster national consciousness. That is fallacy. Are we and have we not been a conscious people where our ethnicity, our race, and our culture reside or is? We have always been. What then did the 1937 riots what did it bring about, the 1937 riots? What about the Buster Revolution? Are we not a conscious people? Are we waiting on these persons who now come to town, who now come to town to raise the consciousness and to facilitate it, give our best lands, our best properties, the remaining pieces in the quest for
development.
National, not development now. The shift is not only for development. If you listen to his concluding thing, that through trade and investment, that national consciousness will arise and occur.
Nonsense. Well, the reality is, Rose, quickly, I have to get ready to move to the next segment. But let me say quickly two things. Above all, my brothers and sisters, do not swear, not by heaven or by earth or by anything else. All you need to say is simply yes or no. I will leave that there. And the last thing before I invite Mr. Millington to join us, Abraham to join us, the last thing I'll say is this. When you cannot attack the message, you attack the messenger. When you cannot attack the message, you have to discredit the messenger so as to try to discredit the message, especially when you know the message is accurate. So, Rose, I'm just going to leave those two comments there, and we are going to thank you so much. I know you've been brief tonight in terms of what the time we have. We have quite a bit to cover, and thank you so much for your brief interaction with us. As always, passionate, and as always, highly informative. But let me take this opportunity to also welcome Abraham Millington, a very special name there, sir. That name has a lot of meaning for the entire world. So let me welcome you to the show tonight. Good evening. Good to see you. Has been a while. I think you might be muted. You might be muted. Let me see here. Yeah, you're
Oh,
unmuted.
yes.
Yes.
Yes. Good to see you. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Great to see you.
Hi to all at home and the diaspora. I would wish before I start that Dave could refer to the email, and I have 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to read 2 clips before I proceed. The first. What's the headline, Dave? Africa Investment Forum 2019, Reinventing Ways of Acting and Thinking for More Efficient Projects. Greater donor mobilization is needed to support the project preparation process that is so, come down because it's apparently the screen is right, that is so strategic for investment on the continent. These are the words of Patricia de Lille, South Africa's Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure. She was part of the Building Early Stage Pipeline panel discussion held at the Africa Investment Forum 2019 in Johannesburg, the economic capital of South Africa. The discussion was moderated by Adam Iqbal, representative of Boston Consulting Group in Johannesburg, while the other panel members included Kofi Klose, Director of Project Development for Africa 50, Jurie Swart, CEO of Africa Infrastructure Investment Managers, and goes on. Come down. Africa needs 150 billion every year to finance its development. This means that the continent is faced with a funding challenge if it is to support its increasing population, growing urbanization, and ever-increasing demand for goods and services. Governments and multilateral development banks cannot meet these needs alone. The African private sector can play a much greater role, not only by providing more innovative financing solutions, but also by doing so on a much larger scale. Come down some more. The increasing partnership. Increased partnership to multiply successes. It is crucial to involve more partners to support this process and convince investors to deploy funds. The African Development Bank is particularly active in this area. We need to involve more African and international donors in this process, said Julie Swart. Now, go down to the very bottom. The financial, right. The African Investment Forum inaugural edition was launched in 2018 in partnership with Africa 50, Afreximbank, the Trade Development Bank, the Development Bank of South Africa, the Islamic Development Bank, the Africa Finance Corporation, the European Investment Bank. The forum runs 11 to 13 November in Johannesburg. Next slide, please. And that was 20 what? 2018, I think, or 20, right. Is this the 2019? The second one now, second link. This is Afreximbank and Government of Barbados enter a milestone understanding for Africa diaspora trade ties. Come down, you see this is COVID here, is everybody there masks covering their faces. Let's come down. Bridgetown, October 9, 2021. African Export-Import Bank, Afreximbank, and the Government of Barbados have signed a memorandum of understanding to expand trade and investment links between Africa and the Caribbean island state. Under the Memorandum of Understanding, the two parties will explore opportunities for joint investment and trade finance aimed at expanding economic ties between Africa and Barbados. The agreement will also facilitate knowledge sharing between Afreximbank and the government of Barbados, providing businesses and investors on either side of the Atlantic with higher quality information with which to pursue trade and investment opportunities. This knowledge sharing will include collaborative use of electronic platforms for customer due diligence, payments, trade exchanges, trade information, and regulatory details. Afreximbank will also consider putting in place a financial facility in an amount of US $250 million to support trade and investment exchange. Okay, I hope I'm not going too fast, but I think there's a reason why. The agreement is set to increase the flow of goods and services while enhancing connectivity between African nations and Barbados. The two parties will actively promote coordinated development and trade finance from both public and private sectors. Meanwhile, they will work in concert to advance air, sea, and telecommunications links, as well as cultural exchange between Africa and Barbados. Now, this person, I'm going to skip that person. We are committed. This is what we are committed. This is what the Prime Minister of Barbados is saying. We are committed to being able to ensure the trade of goods, the movement of people and services, and the flow of information. We believe that once trade information flows, once people, goods, and services flow seamlessly, then we can reconnect and make the embodiment of CARICOM as the sixth region of the African Union real for all of us. Lastly, African Export-Import Bank is a Pan-African multilateral financial institution mandated to finance and promote intra and extra African trade. Now, I'm going to just stop it right there. So, what I think, the last slide is a link. Dave, sorry. Now, on you can make it, you can enlarge on it if you're able to. No, that was 2019. The last one I was doing was 2021. And if you were to search the bank now, this is AI. It says the African Export-Import Bank, Afreximbank, a Pan-African multilateral financial institution, has a branch. Hear what I say? It has a branch. Has. You hear the word has? Has a branch in Barbados to facilitate trade, investment, and development between Africa and the Caribbean. Here's a more detailed look. Afreximbank's purpose. The Afreximbank's aim to provide funding for trade, investment, and development projects between Barbados and the Caribbean. And come down, Barbados branch. The bank opened a branch in Barbados on August 4th, 2023. Now, this is just maybe the AI misled us, but this contribution the reason I brought this to be in. Now, you understand what they want, because everybody must understand. You don't need to be a legal luminary to understand that a contract is based upon what X wants and what Y is to gain, or the agreement between the two either meets or some form of fashion. So we heard that there was a substantial amount of money that Africa needs to keep itself afloat. And now coming to Barbados, you realize that there was South Africa mentioned there. You realize that the Prime Minister travels to China. The newspaper spoke of increased relations with Brazil a couple of months ago. And then there was an article I said earlier about India. And the spelling of that obviously would start to spell BRICS. Now, where I'm going with this, why I'm linking one to the other, is that there's something called, for all legal scholars, there's something called Socratic and syllogistic reasoning. the leader of opposition, in his legal luminary state, outlined in his earlier remarks when he was giving his presentation, and it was brilliantly done, that essentially, to put it in Bajan terms, the Prime Minister of Barbados believes that because the people don't have concrete evidence that X and Y is the case, that the Socratic evidence and the circumstantial evidence is not sufficient to rule out skullduggery. And I must speak to this other part that is very misleading. Barbados and Barbadians were taken from Africa. We cannot separate ourselves from things Africa. Second thing, we were a dually settled people, the Eurocentric and the Afrocentric. And if Barbados is to go forward, whether it be a republic or whatever it calls itself, it ought not to hear the words, it ought not to crucify the Eurocentric for the development of the Afrocentric. Either both will go forward or it's nothing at all. I don't know how a person could go to South Africa in the person of a prime minister, speaking of not only freedom, but what she was speaking of, not liberation, she was speaking of the word I'm trying to find, democracy. How could she go to speaking of democracy? And it's almost like cancel culture, where you're like canceling one set of people to strengthen the other part. So the reason I said this, the reason I gave this whole background of 2019, 2021, I think 2024, I know the AI search brings us to 2023. You see the English language, you hear it's like when leader of opposition was talking to the Attorney General's consistent financing of skullduggery in terms of it was the present continuous. So this one here now, the bank opened. No, this is past tense now. A branch in Barbados on August 4th, 2023. Now, having said all what I said, I think that Barbados is in a very serious predicament where I believe the manipulation of the loopholes of governance is being taken advantage of, because essentially maybe what is happening is not wrong, as Adrian Hines was saying yesterday, I think it was, or the day before. Because no, you can interject whenever you want, but you can hear me, right?
Yes, I can.
Right, so I'm saying that if, in my opinion, what Barbados is under right now is almost like a miniature, not really a miniature because it doesn't really matter if it's big or small, some form of a monarchy. And with that being the case, it means, like the Belgian was still like him or lumpum. Like him or lumpum, this one is. You know what I'm saying? It's like, or there's another saying that the older folks used to say, could or do could, we can X and Y and K. But everything that is permissible doesn't mean that it is, what's the word now? Logically right for the masses to obtain. So though a prime minister can do what as she like, and technically speaking, she can do as she like until the next election, and try to get Barbados into the neck of, look, if the prime minister wants to say, I took the final dots of British sovereignty and I want Barbados to be under the basket of BRICS, she should come to the public and say that. But by her not saying it in words, but putting all of the infrastructural embodiments in place, it's like if somebody is like if you said you wanted chicken and rice, and I gone in the kitchen and I put in all the ingredients to do fish cakes. Well, you're gonna look at me and say, "Wait, you're going foolish or something?" So if you are putting all the ingredients to put Barbados in a precarious position where it looks like it's going to be a headquarters of some sort, and the satellite of external forces to just do and be all that we were, or I should say all that the country did not really sign on to. without telling the country, that is an issue. I hope I wasn't going too fast, but I had to give that background about the Afreximbank and leaving it right here that people can see. Don't blame me, blame AI. Maybe AI is wrong, because AI is just maybe AI is wrong, Pastor Ferdy. Maybe it is wrong. See, maybe
Well,
the research. Go on.
I don't think so. I don't think so, Abraham, because unlike Wikipedia, which just tonight I was discussing this. It was being discussed among my kids.
Yes,
Unlike Wikipedia, AI searches the entire internet
correct. It's
and
very thorough.
compiles information from every single source.
Yeah, very
UN,
accurate.
United States, UK, you name it, every single source, and pulls it
Correct.
together with a result.
Well,
What I will
go on.
say, because this is very important for the people to see, but interestingly, as you were speaking and I researched the matter of the Afreximbank, I asked AI, where is it located in Barbados? Since the office is open here, as you indicated, on the 4th of August 2023, they opened an office, a branch here.
Yes,
I asked AI,
yes, please.
yeah,
Yes, please.
I asked AI, where is it located? AI says to me, Afreximbank has established a regional office in Barbados, specifically at the corner of Bay Street and JEMMOTT'S Lane, where it will house a trade center, a luxury hotel, and corporate or business offices. And it goes on to even quote the minister. It goes on to even quote the minister. This is AI.
Could Dave, could you go back to the other one? Keep this one at hand, but could you go back to the other link that started up with Afreximbank and go to see the funds that it was talking about? The one I think is the link that says Afreximbank. It says Afreximbank and something. Right, come down and see the amount that they were speaking to. I think it was 250. No, go back up. It was 250,000 US. Right there, right. This knowledge sharing will include collaborative use of electronic platforms for customer due diligence, payments, trade exchanges, trade information, and regulatory details. Afreximbank will also consider putting in place a financial facility in an amount of US 250 million to support trade and investment exchange. Now, while I go here, what I want to say is that I find that I sometimes make comments on Facebook. Somebody will say, "Well, he going off your rockers, man. He losing it." I always say there's something called investigative journalism, and that is something that has been lacking in Barbados for a long time. They have RPB, the Royal RPB have a song called the press. Is it the press conference? I always have it. Let's say again. I wish that Dave could play the press conference, and it was talking about not one ask, ASK here. In other words, there's nothing. All these things happening in the media in ask. You are not going to see media in Barbados give such expository information. But you can see them line up like you remember you line up at school, Pastor Ferdy, for skim milk.
Yes, I did, and biscuits.
Me too. I had skim milk at St. Clements. I remember skim milk at St. Clements, man. Everybody line and trust me, in those days, if you didn't get that skim milk, man, you feel bad, Especially the pink one. They had the pink one, and they had I think it was pink and white chocolate too, and then man, but you see how orderly everybody line up for this. That's how media in Barbados does it. Hello, are you there? Oh,
Yeah,
as opposed
but
to go on. I hope
yeah,
that I hope that my short stay with you was good enough, because I was not accorded a long stay. So
yes, yes.
I hope that my information was succinct and enough that people can understand and link the dots. I know that Marcia is an accountant, So she should be able to add up and upon those links that I gave her, and go behind the veil of the periphery that
whole
is being
matter.
shown. Correct.
Yes, thank
It's a
you,
pleasure
Abraham.
seeing you again.
Appreciate that, and really good to see you again too. But you know, I
All the best.
I looked into all of this stuff as you were speaking. Actually, the bank is has committed $700 million in support of investment and trade in the Caribbean, and has approved 1.5 billion in funding for CARICOM member states. Just for the people to know. Thank you so very much, Abraham.
All the best.
Appreciate
All
it.
the best to
Yes,
you.
and all the best to
Yes.
you. Let's not forget the fight. Let's not forget the fight.
Can't.
Unfortunately, because of your location, you can't join us on Saturday, March the 22nd. That's this coming Saturday, 10 o'clock,
Of
where
their
we will be
spirit.
gathering at Folkestone Beach, and we'll
Okay.
be marching to Holetown Civic Center. And trust me, a lot of this stuff is going to be discussed in that march. So be with us in spirit. Thank you so
I
very
will. All the best.
all the best to you too. Thank you so much. God bless you, Abraham. Well, I tell you, folk, you know, this is why I said answer the questions and all the suspicion, all the talk will dissipate. Stop attacking the prophet to try to discredit the prophet's prophecy and his statement. Stop doing that. That is not a good idea. My goodness, we are going to take a few minutes to do the advertising here for this march. Heritage destroyed. You see it there on your screen. Concrete over culture, profits over people. Walls rise, beaches disappear. Stop the land grab, preserve for our children, privatize paradise, public loss. We're talking about Bay Street, Brighton, Dover, East Coast, Barbados Defense Force Headquarters, Gibbs's Gully, Gemmott's Lane, Oystons, the Newton Historic Slave Burial Ground, Holetown Civic Center, the Screw Dock, all down along the front, the waterfront there on the Careenage, all down, going down toward Hank Street, all down to the port, all down there. That is a part of the heritage of this country. So we are inviting all of you. Listen, I heard Marcia say it last night. You know, we like Barbadians like a lot of long talk, but you've got to put action. You've got to put feet to action. There is a one of the apostles that says, "You say you have faith, then show me your faith by your works." If you all say that this is disturbing to you, let us see you at that march on Saturday coming, 10 o'clock, Folkestone Beach to Holetown Civic Center. We're not just going to be dealing with that matter as it relates to the Folkestone, to the Holetown Civic Center, the whole town, let me call it the Holetown's Heritage Center. Let me call it that. But we are going to be dealing with a lot of other things that will be coming up as we are sharing in that entire environment on this coming Saturday. So plan to be there with us. Don't just talk. Don't just come on here on the show and join us and put your comments. There are 926 of you. And if you're in Barbados, I expect to see you there. I am going to be there on Saturday. Marcy is going to be there on Saturday. Hopefully, all the others will be able to join us as well. We are going to be there on Saturday. And as Rose says, listen, we are, and I want to be clear on this. I am not siding with the leader of the opposition. We establish our loyal opposition. And my understanding is that it actually contributed to him making his decision. So he has actually joined us. And we are the opposition of this country. We are the people, we are the civil society who, in the absence of a major presence in Parliament, have joined together to provide the government with a legal opposition. Let me welcome my next guest on this evening, Mr. Victor Lewis. Victor, you know it. I'm always happy to have show. And let me take this opportunity to welcome you to this yet another Marcia Week show. And I know you've been busy. I know you have been busy. I can see it. I can see it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ferdinand, and good night to all the folks of the loyal opposition. I want for you to pay attention to this little uh, item that was sent to me early this morning, you know, the devotional dimension. It says, you don't have to fight against wicked people. Their own plotting, scheming, and lies will bring them down.
We'll bring them down. Yes.
Dr. Ferdinand said, Victor, read that again, man.
Dear me. Give me the
Dr. Ferdinand.
reference. Give me the reference. Give me the reference. Give me the
I can
reference.
send it to you, man. I can send
Send
it
it
to
to
you.
me, please.
You
I beg
don't
you.
have to fight against wicked people. Their own plotting, scheming, and lies will bring them down.
They'll be snared in their own traps.
Of course. I want for Dave just to play that video. Play the video that I sent for you, Dave. You know, when you watch this video of all the things that, you know, we mentioned, when you watch this, it is gonna, you know, put you into a state of mind that will suggest to you that at some point in time, soon and very soon, they will come down. So Dave, just play that video for me. You know, I was taking up my expensive phone on Dr. Ferdinand, you know, and I went to my expensive phone and I saw this video. So I sent it to Dave, and I would assume a lot of folks would have seen it already, but this is the first time I saw it. And when I watched that video, it said to me, you know, Victor boy, you know, you've been saying these things all the while, but look now for yourself, you know. Look now for yourself. This is
Hi, this is Sherry
prophecy being fulfilled. Go ahead.
Someone sent me this and said, look, Mia Motley appoints her sister as the director of the BTMI in the UK office. Well, what good is it to have a sister who's the head of a country if you can't get a job? Well, they call it nepotism. You could call it anything you want, but you can get a job other than your sister, who is the ruler of a country, as small as it is, doesn't matter, an island more so than a country, but a country. I don't know, do you want to hear what she's saying? It's in Manchester. We're here, day 2 of BTMI, Beijing Safari Roadshow, is in full swing as we continue our 4 cities in 4 days tour across the UK. This is a golden opportunity for travel partners and tour operators to explore why Barbados should be at the top of every traveler's list. Let me see. Can you hear me?
Safari Roadshow. We are in the wonderful city of Manchester this evening, and we look forward to having all of our tour operators and our partners joining us for a lovely evening and showcasing the wonderful things that Barbados has to offer. Enjoy. Welcome to Agent Safari Roadshow.
Elan Motley, E-L-A-N. I think she's the one that is at George River building that massive, let me hold this here. I think she's building a massive house at, let me
You cut the video there, but I wanted for that section of the video to show what was being shown there. I don't know why the video cut, but nevertheless, I wanted just the video to show that point where it transitioned from that particular picture to the actual photo showing the building. You know, that when I saw that, I don't know if you can pull the video back up again. I don't know if that was a technical mistake or otherwise, but I was conscious of the fact that when you look at that video and you start to draw a conclusion based on all the things that have been said, I just wonder within myself, who in actual fact are telling or have told the lies. You know, Dave, if you can pull the 2 other photos up, I would have sent you 2 other photos, because we know that Dr. Crystal Haynes took a stance for this country as a young person, as a person, not this one, the next one, right? The next one, right? This particular photo, if you can enlarge in it. When I showed you what transpired at Joe's River, and all the time I was going to Brisbane, Australia, I just started to scratch my head when I saw that from naked departure. And it took me back to a point where I sort of remembered watching a program where a similar content was suggested by the program Politically Incorrect or Politically Correct. But I know that on that program, certain allegations were made about a relationship between an Australian and all those things we know now. Maybe we knew before. But of course, when we look at this video, we can see the clear big smile. Behind all of that smile is lies. We can see Dr. Crystal Haynes in this particular photo. I'm just wondering, why is she there? What particular dimension is she represented? And I'm saying, when we look at that group, we can see Dr. Crystal Haynes standing out as one of the young people. Bring the other photo up there. Bring the other photo up, Dave. And we can see again Dr. Crystal Haynes. Just widen it up. If you can just widen it up a bit. Dr. Crystal Haynes was in that photo with the Prime Minister of Barbados, and one of the dimensions that she represented is that of the youth of this country. And when all these folks with such wonderful, nice Bajan smiles would look at what the Prime Minister of Barbados, a leader, what she did to Dr. Crystal Haynes, is to say, because you stood up as some person nationally conscious of this country, she stood up not as a medical doctor, not as some person who is well versed in the medical field, but as some person who is conscious of the fact that I'm leading young people of this country and what she was subjected to by the leader of this country.
Well, Victor, you know, some of the things again, as you know, we have to always be careful here on the show. I must tell you that the particular video, we won't be able to carry any more of that. But that particular video, I have always had a couple of queries with regards to the source of information. As you know, I always, and I know my team always researches thoroughly matters. And as a result of that, we have to be a bit careful. So we'll hold on that video if you don't mind.
I find I don't have a difficulty. I don't have a difficulty there. I don't have a difficulty with
yeah,
that. That's
so
fine because
you know, it is something I have observed, and I have watched several of the videos, and whenever I do, I always go back and do my research, because it is you just have to be careful. You just have to be careful.
Right. Yeah. I'm aware of that.
Good.
But I'm saying that allegations 1, allegations 2, they may be allegations 3, but at some point in time, and let me just go back again. Their own plotting, scheming, and lies will bring them down. And it's only a matter of time, Dr. Ferdinand. But look at it. we realize that this country, Barbados, going forward, it doesn't depend upon you and I, Dr. Ferdinand. It depends upon who? It depends on what we invest in the youth of this country. I'm just asking, how will Dr. Crystal Haynes feel when she has to face all those other children or other youth of this country? That as a leader, she must be encouraged to tell the truth. Dr. Crystal Haynes, when she was called to office, she said these three things. She says, at that particular point in time, I was taking care of my 5-month-old son. She says, I was at a point of pivot in my career. And she also said, which is very significant, that she had no political affiliations. She wasn't a member of the Barbados Labour Party. She wasn't a member of the Democratic Labour Party. She had no association, period, with a political party. So she was called upon because she was young, one, and she was very educated, that at such a young age, she can now declare herself as a medical doctor, setting up her own business. She says, hey, the Prime Minister of Barbados called me, but I had no political career. But here is one of the justifiable reasons why she was called. I am saying that we as a country must not sit down and allow this quality of individual to just go by the wayside. I'm saying that yes, the Prime Minister looked upon the people of this country, looked upon Dr. Crystal Haynes and said, I can see potential. Crystal said that the Prime Minister of Barbados saw something in her that she didn't see in herself. And because Crystal stood up as a young person, setting the correct example, because she decided to tell the truth, because she decided, well, I know that I'm a medical doctor, I know I have my own business, but I still know the joy of green spaces in Barbados. I cannot sit down there as a youth, being a model for all these youths that you have called me to represent. And yes, tell lies. I cannot sit back and do that. It's against my conscience as a senator in this government to be able to sit down and say to these youth that I will repeat after the Prime Minister. No, I have a conscience of my own. And I want to applaud Dr. Crystal Haynes for standing up, because she's saying to the youth of Barbados, do not speak what the BRP want you to speak or what the DRPs want you to speak. Have a clear conscience, and we know the value. We know the value of objective criticism. We know the value of checks and balances. And Dr. Ferdinand, I know within yourself, you know, that if your son or daughter or wife, as the case may be, had to say something to you that is contrary to your beliefs, that you want, yes, give them the axe.
No, absolutely not. Otherwise, I'd be living by myself.
But what kind of example is this as a leader? A leader, you know, you're setting the model. You're setting the model for other people to follow. And here we have all of these young aspiring people, of which we will vest this country into their hands. You know, we
Yeah.
had Arbar came, he went. David Thompson came, he gone. Owen Alpha came, he gone. What do you think will happen to the current Prime Minister? She will go too. Who will take over this country? We cannot afford to have youth who will speak according to the party. We want to have youth who will speak according to their conscience, to be able to deliver their beliefs.
I will
And
say
here
to
it is.
you,
Yeah, go right
I
ahead.
will say to you, Victor, from what little knowledge I have of Dr. Haynes, I understand, and let me be clear. She is a born again Christian. She is a member of one of our churches, and I believe that the fact that she accepted the role that she was invited to accept was because she believed that was God's call on her life at the time. She has that strong spiritual foundation, and she has demonstrated that she will not compromise her spiritual values, which determine her beliefs and her moral compass. She's not going to do that in the name of backing a government when things are not what they ought to be. And I just wanted to share that's the little bit I do know about her. I have not personally met her or anything of the sort, but I do know from a couple of my colleagues that I don't want to call the name of the church because I believe I know which one it is, but I don't want to call it because I'm not 100% sure of it. But she's one of the young, promising leaders of our country that demonstrated a level of integrity that far surpasses anything we observed over the past week in the Parliament. By far.
Well, Dr. Ferdinand, we cannot afford to lose that potential because that the government took a stance, you know, that she will no longer be a senator in this country. We need other platforms to hear from Crystal Haynes. We need other platforms. We need other platforms to negate that impact that certainly a young lady like her with such quality, with such great ambition, we need other platforms, you know. I don't know.
And we need other members of parliament to step up. It is an indictment on all of them that it took a young lady of her position, her stature, considerably younger, subsequently considerably less experience than many of them in parliament, to take a stand. And it is an indictment on all of them. And I make no apologies, especially when I look at people like the member for St. Thomas, when I look at people like the member for St. James South, I believe it is. I'm not calling names. When I look at other members of parliament, the same minister of finance, when I look at the attorney general, the representative for St. Joseph, these are people who have years of experience in politics. And, you know, I will say this, that's the problem we have. I know a lot of people don't like the current president in the United States, but I will say this tonight. I wish we had a position like that would eradicate the political mentality in our country and bring truth and reality forward. I'm not saying he is a giver of truth or otherwise. What I am saying is that we need as much a dismantling of the swamp in this country as we are seeing happen in the United States. We need it to happen here. Reverend Rogers took a stand. The Dean, Critchlow, and all of those took their time and their stands. I took my stand. I heard somebody on the radio today talk about the church, and I'm saying I am representative of the church on this show. The church is speaking. When I open my mouth and speak, the church is speaking. And I know many of them that are in agreement with where we are at. And this is what we need. We need a cleansing of the swamp in this country. That is what Barbados needs. We need to get rid of the political mentality and get people who have a vested interest in the development and advancement of our country and its people in a serious manner, where they are genuinely true to transparency and accountability and not just rhetoric. Sorry to interrupt you.
We know the Bible states, we know that the Bible states that righteousness exalteth a nation. Righteousness exalteth a nation, but sin is a reproach. So we cannot afford to continue down this political affiliated mentality that whatever I say has to be politically correct. If I am supporting Barbados Labour Party, whatever I say must be politically correct associated with the Barbados Labour Party. I'm saying that we have got to reach a stage in our development, in our training, to give young people that space. A one space we know that has been created to bring balance to the governance of this country. Is the Public Accounts Committee. That is one of the checks and balance tools that has been designed within government to keep us in check. And for the development of our youth, we've got to be conscious of this one thing, that we don't want our youth to be developed with the mindset that I have got to be politically correct. Give them the grounds. You know, many times we would enter debates and everything at school. And we are conscious in our debate session that you present your side, I present my side, and then we can come to a common understanding. But to train our youth where we have to be politically correct, that's a recipe for disaster.
Absolutely. I
That's
couldn't
a
agree with
recipe
you.
for disaster.
I couldn't agree with you more, Victor. And you know, your final comment there just now with the PAC is actually going to lead us into the next segment, because we are going to do a mic on the move, and that mic on the move is going to be engaging the press conference with the leader of the opposition that occurred today. And you know, Victor, I will say this. Yeah, you know, you mentioned something about myself, my children, and so on. You know, we have some tough conversations in our family. You know, when there are times I'm wrong and they're right. There are times I'm right and they're wrong. But here's the thing: our youth have a greater access to information today than we ever had in our time. They do not need a political party to be informed on anything. That is why there is the push for this cybercrime bill to control information that is vested in the internet that other people can get and don't need you. That is the problem this government is dealing with. We do not need you to come around like we used to years ago. You remember those vans that used to go around and show movies and whatnot. We don't need that kind of thing now. We now have AI. We saw it demonstrated right here tonight on this show, where we can get information from all around the world in less than 2 seconds. And so we do not want to divide. I don't any longer. I was a member of the BLP. My brother is probably still in there. My sister is still in there. My mother was the planning NEC of the Labour Party. And I can tell you, I have no interest in being involved in any party that does not have vested interest in the people of this country who elected them to defend them and to represent them and to put them in place. And that is what I am beginning to see. Not just beginning, I've been seeing Mr. Thorne make an effort to speak on the behalf of the people. And as we move into this other segment, Victor, you know, listen to it carefully, because I don't know how much of an opportunity you had to listen to the press conference today. It was over an hour and some minutes. I got bits and pieces as I was moving around and involving myself today. But we're going to move quickly into that. And I thank you for bringing us into that, because the mention of the Public Accounts Committee, you are correct. I mentioned it tonight already. And I said, if you are transparent and there is no corruption and there is no issue and you have nothing to hide, activate the Public Accounts Committee, demand your representatives to facilitate the PAC and the leader of the opposition, who's the chairman, investigate. You have nothing to hide. You have no corruption to worry about. You should not have an issue.
We must seek to have transparency in the development of our youth, especially hopefully soon headed by Dr. Crystal Hinds.
Dr. Lewis. Dr. Haynes, sorry. Well, we're moving quickly on to this next session. For those of you, you may have missed a bit of it. You may have missed it today because many of you might be at work. But we are going to bring a piece, as we always do on the show, Mike on the Move, the press conference with the leader of the opposition today.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kevin. And thank you, Amoy, for those brief interventions. As we have said, we are not here to contest the assault on a young lady. You know, this is a government that has sought to be the champion for women, and here it is. This vicious assault on a young lady. So we want Barbadians to take note. Let us therefore get on to this question of the Hope scandal that continues. I'm not going to go into any details, except that something that the Prime Minister said yesterday caught our attention, and we wanted to catch the attention of all Barbadians. They continue to suggest that there's no impropriety, there's no corruption, there's nothing wrong with the Hope matter. Just about everything is wrong with the Hope matter. But what we will do, we will once again defer to the Public Accounts Committee for a full investigation on Hope. What we do know is that, well, I can't say we do know, but we don't have any evidence that the government has pursued any investigation. We don't have that evidence. And in all the discussion yesterday, neither the Prime Minister nor the Minister of Housing paused to provide evidence that they have asked or that they have pursued an investigation. According to my knowledge, as chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, it is the Public Accounts Committee which has sought to pursue an investigation. And I repeat again, so that the public knows, when the matter came up before the Public Accounts Committee, the government members on that committee who sit in majority tried to block the investigation. They say that they have a right to take a vote to determine whether the Hope matter should have been investigated. I wanted the Hope matter investigated as a matter of priority, and the government members opposed that and say that they wanted another investigation and that they would not have the Hope matter heard. So that we're hearing contradictions. We're hearing from the Prime Minister last year and the Minister of Housing most recently that government is interested in pursuing an investigation. Yet, when the investigation comes properly before the Public Accounts Committee, the government is fighting against the effort to have that investigation. But I wanted to reflect on a statement that the Prime Minister made yesterday. The Prime Minister said, and all of this came to a head because of the Nation's reporting. Apparently, Ms. Maria Bradshaw wrote an article in the Nation yesterday which reflected on a report coming from the Auditor General. In some indignation, the Prime Minister and her colleagues in St. Michael's South sought to answer, and the Prime Minister said that she telephoned the Auditor General yesterday. Now, on Sunday, she telephones the Auditor General. There's something very wrong with that. The Auditor General constitutionally is an independent person, like the Chief Justice, like the Commissioner of Police, like the Director of Public Prosecutions. These are all independent constitutional creatures. And a politician, whether you're Prime Minister or the least among the apostles in cabinet, you do not have legal access to these persons. The legal access that the Prime Minister has to the Auditor General is under the legislation that gives her the right to write to him and request a special audit, which, according to my information, he is doing. Now, the Prime Minister has not told Barbadians whether she has written to the Auditor General to request a special audit. But that is the only access, as far as I'm aware, that the Prime Minister has legally to the Auditor General. It is out of place, and it is a dangerous state of affairs when a Prime Minister can admit that she telephoned up the Auditor General to ask him about the state of his investigation. That is wrong. That is very, very wrong. That is the behavior of an autocrat. That is somebody who now believes that state officials, independent state officials, sit in some subordinate position to her. That is so dangerous. That is why I'm continuing to complain about the absence of a Republican constitution in this country. That is why I continue to complain that although we have gone Republic, we've gone Republic only insofar as making the head of state a position belonging to a Barbadian. It is only to that extent, and I call it presidentialist amendment. We have turned the Governor General into a president, and we have said that the president is the head of state. So to that extent, we are a republic, except that we have a Westminster Constitution. So that is the great constitutional dilemma that this country faces. And facing that constitutional dilemma, it means that the Prime Minister now seems to be taking advantage of this dilemma, of this state of affairs, in which, as I've said before, constitutionally, we appear to be in no man's land. We are a republic. Yes, we are a republic, but we are functioning with the Westminster Constitution. So that is a very basic contradiction in which this country is existing. They said last week that we're the world's newest republic. We are also the world's most embarrassing republic, because we are the only republic that has a Westminster Constitution. And I repeat that the Prime Minister seems to be taking advantage of that situation, so that in telephoning up the Auditor General, that is a very dangerous state of affairs. The news report quotes her as having said to him, as having asked him, "Did you submit a report? Is the report complete?" That is improper. That is grievously improper. He is not her employee. He is not her subject. He is not her subordinate. She does not sit in any supervisory capacity over the Auditor General. The Auditor General, by law, reports to the Public Accounts Committee. That is the committee chaired by the Office of the Leader of the Opposition. In fact, at meetings of the Public Accounts Committee, the Auditor General sits in obviously for the purpose of confirming his report, clarifying his report, but he sits with us. When we sit as a Public Accounts Committee, he is there with us. And so the Prime Minister is out of place. The Prime Minister certainly is not a member of the Public Accounts Committee, but as I have said, if the Prime Minister wants a special audit, the law empowers her to write to the Auditor General and ask for that special audit. There are three bodies that may request a special audit from the Auditor General. The Parliament may do it by special resolution. I may do it as Leader of the Opposition. The Prime Minister may do it. Let the Prime Minister say to Barbadians whether she has requested a special audit from the Auditor General. Because last year, during her wrap-up on the budget debate, she said that she was interested in pursuing an investigation. The public is now entitled to ask whether the Prime Minister has requested that special audit. If she has requested it, I would have thought that yesterday was the perfect and opportune time for her to say, look, I wrote to the gentleman and asked him for a special audit. No, she does not say that. What she says is that she telephoned him to interrogate him, and he is beyond interrogation by the Prime Minister. But that is akin to what Mr. Weir did during the estimates debates, that he felt that he could interrogate, charge at the Commissioner of Police. So this government has a general attitude of hostility towards constitutional institutions in this country. Let me repeat that there are constitutional bodies, there are constitutional figures, there are institutions that are beyond the reach, they're beyond the interrogation of the Prime Minister. By the doctrine of separation of powers, the Prime Minister has no access to the Chief Justice nor any of the judges of the court. The DPP, the same thing. The DPP's function is that of prosecuting people in courts. The Prime Minister ought to have no access to the DPP. And apart from her right or power to request a special audit from the Auditor General, she has no access to that Auditor General. And to actually admit that on Sunday you telephone the man to interrogate him, that is a dangerous state of affairs. It smacks of autocracy, or in Africa use the word despot. And that is the behavior of a despot. And we want to tell the people of Barbados that we are now in very dangerous times. We are now in very dangerous times when a prime minister believes that her powers are unlimited. There's something called the rule of law, and the rule of law seeks to remind all of us that no one is above the law, and the rule of law seeks to limit the powers of officials of state. Every official of state, including the prime minister, has limited powers. The body that is supreme, or the document that is supreme in this country, is the Constitution. No one has powers over and above the Constitution. I repeat, therefore, that it is unconstitutional, it is improprietous for the prime minister to be intervening and trespassing on the premises of the Auditor General. He is not her employee. He is not subject to her dictate. He is not there to be interrogated, whether on a Sunday afternoon or Wednesday morning, by the prime minister. That is wrong. It is a very strange admission that she made, and we want to give the Auditor General the assurance that the Public Accounts Committee will continue to support his work, and that the PAC, he continues to have the support of the PAC. We speak honestly. We are honest voices for the people, and I will say this as well. I think Barbadians need to know that the members of the government, that report upon which Ms. Bradshaw based their article yesterday, I'm going to bring things to the public now. The government was in possession of that report in Parliament last week. And it is clear to me that the government does not like the content of the report. And I will admit, I've seen it. I have seen it, whether preliminary or not. I have seen it. So I'm not going to hide anything from Barbadians. However it got to me, it got to me. However it got to the government, it got to the government. But what disappoints the government is that the report was leaked, and that the government saw it, and that the opposition saw it, and that the government does not like its content, and that a prime minister, therefore, on a Sunday admits that she telephoned up the Auditor General, and he discloses to her that the report is a draft, and then she goes on to say, and it ought to have had the word incomplete on it. That is wrong. That is wrong. Again, you cannot dictate to the Auditor General how he constructs his report, how he fashions his report. If he puts the word draft on every page, you cannot, Prime Minister, dictate to the Auditor General that he should have said that it is incomplete. I'll say this. You know, Walter C. Scott said, "Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive." The government's participation in this entire matter has begun in deception. Deception. The government has lied about its involvement in Hope from the very beginning. From the very beginning, we took the position that the National Housing Corporation ought to have been the body which manage public housing and public lands in Barbados for the purpose of housing. Government went and set up this company. This is no private company, and they came with the pretty words, "Oh, this is a public-private sector partnership." This was no private public sector partnership. Government incorporated a private company and used government monies to enfranchise private persons. And the level of salaries paid to these private persons reveals a lot. That the chairman, I said this during the budget debate, and it is worthy of repetition. The government used public monies to enfranchise private persons to pursue government's program. That is all it is. And government was paying the chairman $20,000. And when, for one reason or another, that chairman left, they employed the present chairman, who I know he's not Barbadian, and paid him $30,000. Now, if government can satisfy the Democratic Labour Party or the people of Barbados that there is some official in National Housing Corporation who is paid $20,000 a month, and worse, $30,000 a month. If they can prove that to us, well, we will accept it. But Barbadians must not accept that government has used public monies to enfranchise private persons and to pay private persons extremely high salaries. I say to people all the time, when I was a young lawyer, I participated in the Westeros transfer of titles. And it was done simply. The government vested the lands in the National Housing Corporation. The National Housing Corporation conveyed, transferred each lot to each house owner. And then there was a separate document which by which the landowner agreed with the builder to have his house built. And it was a very smooth transaction. I don't think Westeros was problematic. And this was a fine precedent. I believe it had been done before. I believe it has been done since. But it was all done with public monies, with public participation, and with public officials. Hope is different. Hope is using public monies, but yet enfranchising and generously enfranchising private persons. And the project has been one disaster. I mean, you have a minister of housing admitting yesterday that the one in St. John, the pool, that they did pool this. He admits that he started to put houses on lands that did not have title. Now that is so basic. As children, we grew up here, you don't put wall house on rented land. I mean, and we have a minister of government admitting that that basic rule has been breached. I mean, there is no evidence of greater incompetence and ignorance than what was admitted to yesterday. And these are people sitting at the highest level of government, and these are people who are so arrogant that they believe that they can come to Barbadians and say these kinds of things, and that there will be no sanction. Now, people have been asking me, why don't I ask for the Minister of Housing to be fired? I'm not asking for any Minister of Housing to be fired. You see this thing about asking for ministers to be fired. That's a very interesting way of giving legitimacy to the person who will fire them. And I don't intend to do that because I don't think that the Prime Minister has any moral authority to fire any minister. The Prime Minister is equally at fault for the wrongdoing that is occurring in this government, for the incompetence, all that is going wrong. The Prime Minister sits at the apex of it. We had a situation with Miss McConney. Miss McConney was a disaster in education. And Miss McConney came boldly to the people of Barbados and said, I'm not going anywhere. Obviously, there's a, let me use the word harmonious relationship. There's a harmonious relationship between Miss McConney and the Prime Minister. And she could guarantee that she would not suffer the sanction of dismissal. So why should we in the Democratic Labour Party come asking the Prime Minister to fire anybody? The government needs to be fired. Not a minister, the government needs to be fired. And we in the Democratic Labour Party, we will be a patient party. We will await the time when the election is called. I have told them already that whenever it is called, we shall be ready, because we are satisfied that the people in Barbados are getting themselves ready to rid this country of this incompetent and corrupt administration. It is incompetent. We have listed 30 projects that this government has started, and it has not finished. The ID cards, the constitution, local government, everything that this common entrance exam, everything that this government has touched, it has failed to complete. So we're not asking for any minister to be fired. All need to go, from the Minister of Housing back to the Prime Minister. But that time will come. Let us come to this issue with Afreximbank. Now, as I said, they tried to sneak it into Parliament late a night last week after the budget debate. And it was assumed that when the budget debate finished, Barbadians would have been tired and they would have heard that there's this resolution, this dubious resolution or vague resolution before the Parliament, and nobody would have paid attention. I paid attention. And while I did not wish to be present to hear the personal assaults, including the assault on Amoy and on myself and other members of the Democratic Labour Party, that is what Parliament has reduced to. Parliament has reduced itself to a place of vicious personal assault, childish behavior, really childish behavior. In fact, I will say this, after the debate, when I got up, I couldn't take it anymore. That's not how we were brought up. That's not how we were brought up. We were not brought up here in any public institution. The members of that institution being made subject to vicious and nasty personal assault. And it reached a point, like last year, I said, why should I sit here? This is no longer a parliament. This is a place of very childish men and women. And I'll tell you this, during one of these speeches, which involved the personal assault again, vicious, really vicious personal assault, when I was walking out, one said, oh, you can't take your lashes. No, I use the word childish, puerile. We all know 1 Corinthians 13:11. When I was a child, spoke as a child, I thought of a child. As a child, I reasoned as a child. And when I became a man, I threw off childish things. It seems to me that the government is most unfamiliar with 1 Corinthians 13:11, and I want them to become familiar with that, because I'm hearing on radio, I'm seeing it on social media, that the people in Barbados are embarrassed by the quality of debate that is passing in that place. The snide remarks, oh, okay, fine, you will joke from time to time. Sometimes the jokes are funny, but the snide remarks and the sarcasm and the general nastiness. Look, I spoke for a long time last week, and I don't apologize for that, because I wanted to cover every ministry. I want to tell Barbadians now that more than once during my address, a certain member of the government turned to the speaker and in low voice asked the speaker to stop me. And on the first day, the first afternoon of my speech, I was going along, and in frustration, the person who was leading government business in the House told the speaker that he's going to stop this now, so that an effort was made to prevent me from speaking, and to prevent me from speaking as long as I did, because it was my intention to cover every ministry. I'm the leader of the opposition, and nobody's going to select for me which ministries I'm going to speak about. The people in Barbados have a vested interest in knowing what is going on in every ministry. And Wednesday night, I beg your pardon, Tuesday night, there was a premature break to my speech, because the person leading government business at the time got up and basically said that he can't take it anymore. He didn't use those words, but there was a very abrupt adjournment, suspension of the proceedings. Barbadians, I want you all to know this as well. It is my understanding that in the aftermath of what I did last week, and that is to say, highlight every area, every ministry that deals with the people's business, in the aftermath of that, I am reliably informed that the government is having discussions to limit the length of time that I'm permitted to speak. During the time that I spoke, whether it is 10 hours, 11, I did not abuse anybody. I did not subject anyone to personal abuse. I engaged in what I described as legitimate political commentary, and that legitimate political commentary was not of the nature of any personal assault. Of course, I spoke of the relations between some ministers and other ministers, and more importantly, the relationship between some ministers and the Prime Minister, because that is a matter in which the public must be interested. The public must now be interested to know, for example, whether Ms. Marsha Cadell resigned or whether she was fired. The public needs to know that. The public is entitled to have an explanation as to Mr. Prescott's outbursts. The public is entitled to remember that there was contention, argument between Mr. Ryan Strawn and Ms. Santia Bradshaw in relation to road repairs in his constituency. And I'm going to remind the public of what I said then, notes that I made at the estimates, when Mr. Ryan Strawn asked the question, like John King asked it, how many more must die on Lodge Road before the road gets repaired? I said he was prophetic, because a young man, less than a week after he asked the question, another young man died on Lodge Road. And he was accusing Ms. Santia Bradshaw's ministry of failing and refusing to repair that road that had caused the deaths of 2 persons. All that occurred in Parliament. All that occurred in a government that is problematic. It is problematic for the people of this country, and it is a government that is problematic, as we say in law, inter se, among themselves. So that is the context within which the resolution for the lands at JEMMOTT'S Lane was brought before the Parliament. As I say, a lot of personal abuse. And it was done late in the night. I think it was intended to avoid the notice of Barbadians. Now, I will just give you a few salient points as to that transaction. They sought to make a comparison with the lands being given to the Caribbean Development Bank, I think in 1978, 1983. This situation is far different. The Caribbean Development Bank is a public institution owned by the CARICOM countries. Afreximbank is not owned by the CARICOM countries. One of the ministers, Govt, said in his delivery that there are similarities, that there is a memorandum, I think he said, which has been signed on to by the CARICOM countries. Let the public know that the relationship between the Barbados government and the Caribbean Development Bank is formal and it is written into law, and that the Caribbean Development Bank is as the name says, it's a development bank, and it is a bank that supplies development funds to all of its member states. So that is the mandate, that is the work of the Caribbean Development Bank. It is a bank established for the development of the CARICOM countries. This bank, Afreximbank, is a private bank. And if there has been any formality between the bank and the CARICOM countries, it is this, that there is a mere memorandum of understanding. Now, if I'm wrong, the Attorney General will come back and correct me. As I always say, I'm not always right, but let the Attorney General come and tell Barbadians that the relationship between the Barbados government and the Caribbean Development Bank is similar to the relationship between the Barbados government and Afreximbank. They are different. They are different. And the relationship between Afreximbank and the CARICOM countries is a different relationship from that which obtains between the Caribbean Development Bank and the CARICOM countries. There's a big difference. I understand that the document that joins Afreximbank to these CARICOM countries is a mere memorandum of understanding. A memorandum of understanding, Simon will tell you, Amoy will tell you, Kevin will tell you, is a short document that just speaks towards discussions that have taken place. Look, the document is called a memorandum of understanding. Don't let these things mystify you. When you want to find out what something means, find out what the words mean. It's a memorandum, a document of understanding. A memorandum of understanding is not a final contract that binds parties to each other. So the comparison between CDB and the member countries and Afreximbank and these parties that signed the memorandum of understanding, there's no comparison. There is no comparison. Afreximbank is a private entity with its headquarters, I think, in Egypt. It is a private bank. Its pursuit is that of making profit, not for these islands, not for these CARICOM countries. It is in the business of making profit for itself. There is no other institution that pursues the motive of profit like a bank. That is a bank. It is there to make money. And evidence of that is contained in the fact that it is going to be building a hotel. The hotel is not going to be owned, as far as I'm aware, by the Barbados government. I don't know how many stories there are, but you get land free. And you're going to build a hotel, 140 rooms, if that's the number, and your headquarters, and you get it free. And you're supposed to be a successful bank. Now, if the government of Barbados were serious about the interests of Barbadians, they would have negotiated for equity, a share by the Barbados government, except that you hand the land of the people to the bank and you say to them, build what you will, build what you wish. And the Barbados government has not been able to provide proof to the people of Barbados that the Barbados government, acting on behalf of the people of Barbados, will have a share, will have an equity, will have an interest in that bank. So that when that massive building goes up, the people of Barbados cannot claim that they have a share. The government of Barbados cannot claim that it has a share in it. And I talked about values based on advice I receive. I'll tell you this. When you have a multi-story building on that piece of land owned by Afreximbank, the value will be hundreds of times over what it is now. So that the value of the land does not matter so much now as will be the value of that land and building. Because in law, there will be no separation between land and building. It becomes one property in law. And if you put an 18-story, 10-story building there on 4 or 5 acres, that is a massive asset. And that is an asset, I beg your pardon, that will be valued in the multi-millions of dollars. So that I want Barbadians to understand that more than giving to Afreximbank a piece of land, they are giving to them a property, a potential property that will be worth more than $100 million. So don't look at the value of the land. Don't look at the size of the land. Look at what is intended to be done there. And that when it is worth over $100 million, I don't know what the value will be. Barbadians will not have a stake, will not have an interest, will not have a share, will not have an equity in that. Barbadians, we have given it to the African Bank. Now, they made arguments about the cultural ties, that this is something we should do for the African Bank because it is Africa and because that we are the descendants of Africa. My response to that was that there's a compelling argument for the cultural, there's a compelling cultural argument. But competing against the cultural argument is the commercial argument. And for all the reasons that I've stated before, the commercial argument against this transaction is stronger than the cultural argument, which may favor the transaction. And of course, as I've said, in introducing the resolution, he sees the opportunity and he anticipated that if I'm against it, I'm against it because I don't like black people. And well, I didn't respond to that directly. I laughed. Clearly, well, he was on a frolic of his own there. I didn't think it was worthy of a response except to laugh at him. But they are trying to sell this project as a cultural, with a cultural argument. That cultural argument is defeated by a commercial argument, and the commercial argument will ask the government of Barbados to defend itself against this very, very preferential treatment of a bank, whether it is from Africa or Sweden. It should not have happened. It should not be done. We have parted with one of our assets, and we have parted with that asset personally. If they had done a lease, perhaps Barbadians would have discussed it differently. But you've parted with it. You've parted with it permanently. And that is unfortunate. I also argued then, the press did not cover my speech in its entirety. So I feel obliged to say a few things, to repeat a few of the salient points that I made then. My position was that if it were a charitable organization, if they were coming to build a hospital or a school or a church, but the compelling one is a hospital. If Afreximbank had been coming to Barbados and saying, look, you are our children, and we want to do something for our children, our African children. We are going to build a hospital for you. Not one Barbadian would have questioned it, but they're coming to build a hotel, which is about profit. They're coming to build the headquarters of a bank, which is about profit. And more than profit, it is about private profit. It is not charitable. It is not philanthropic. There is no guarantee that it will be of any benefit to the treasury in this country going forward. We have parted with it. It is not ours. And the Barbadian government, has not been prudent enough to prove to Barbadians that they have asked for a share. Now, I was discussing with Simon earlier, and these things need to be said. We consider ourselves honest voices. for the people. I want to introduce something to Barbadians because a lot of people are saying to us that the debates in Parliament are not running with any depth, and that's because of the behavior of the government. But I had a discussion a few minutes ago with Simon Clark here, a lawyer, a good lawyer, and I was asking Simon to remind me, to refresh my mind as to the kinds of evidence that a court will accept. There are categories of evidence. When a case comes before a court, there are categories of evidence which will satisfy a court that the offense, if it is a criminal court, that the offense was committed. The highest category, I think, is that thing called real evidence. That is to say, if a man has been shot, you produce the gun, and the forensic science will prove that he has been shot with this gun, that the bullet that entered him came from this gun. That is called real evidence. There's another category of evidence, compelling. It's called direct evidence. And the direct evidence, Amoy, remember these things, right? The direct evidence comes from the witness who saw the man holding the gun, pulling the trigger, and the man dropping dead. So you have real evidence, that's the gun. You have direct evidence, the person who saw the offense being committed. Now, there are several cases in which you may have real evidence. You may have the gun. You may be able to prove that this is the gun that was used in the execution of the man. But you have no direct evidence because the offense took place in a secret place between two persons, and they may tell no tales, as we say. So you have real evidence, but having real evidence without proof as to who pulled the trigger creates some difficulty. And when a court is faced with that dilemma, you go to something called circumstantial evidence. And some witness who lives across the street may say, well, I wasn't there, I didn't see it, but I heard the shot, I heard the explosion, and after I heard the explosion, I saw John Brown running out of the building. Now, to see John Brown running out of the building is not direct evidence that John Brown pulled the trigger. There could have been somebody else in there who pulled the trigger. But he can be convicted on that circumstantial evidence. John Brown can be convicted on that circumstantial evidence. I've said all of that to say that Barbadians have lost trust in this government. And they believe that this government is engaging transactionally with several people, including Barbadians who they put into positions as consultants, Barbadians and Barbadian companies who are receiving contracts to do all kinds of things. Remember, the Prime Minister said all big works got to come through me. All big works. And there are a lot of financial transactions that are being made between this government and several persons. And Barbadians have stopped trusting the propriety of the process. Barbadians believe that there's always a hidden factor. And Barbadians do not have real evidence, nor do they have direct evidence. But Barbadians are beginning to rely on the circumstantial evidence that can convict. And Barbadians believe now that every transaction is one that is dubious, is one that is questionable. And Barbadians are asking, if you take up 4 or 5 acres of land, and if you don't ask, not even for 1 cent, although you spend millions of dollars traveling, and you don't ask for 1 cent, and it is clear that you are not, the Barbados government is not a shareholder, and it is clear that there's no benefit to Barbadians. And Barbadians will then say, but what is the gain to us? Just the building on our landscape? And Barbadians are beginning to ask, but this doesn't make sense. And Barbadians are beginning to say, well, there must be some benefit to someone. I leave it there. That's what Barbadians are beginning to say. And those are the questions that Barbadians are beginning to ask. And that is why the message comes to this government. Barbadians no longer trust you. And we in the Democratic Labour Party have assembled a team of good, young, moralistic, virtuous, and bright people. D. John, Mr. Clark, Mrs. Amoy Gildenborn, Mr. Kevin Miller is here. The others behind us here. Melissa, you're present. Still? Right. We have assembled and are continuing to assemble a virtuous, moralistic, and worthy team. We're not perfect. We're not paragons of virtue. At the end of my budget reply, I advanced several proposals that this party intends, if it should be God's will, that we occupy government in the future, which will be for the consideration of Barbadians. We are showing a readiness. We are showing a readiness to replace a government that is incompetent by yesterday's admission, a government that does not understand its constitutional power, a government that does not understand that it does not sit in supervision over officials of state, a government that has failed miserably to reduce the cost of living. The cost of living is pauperizing a lot of Barbadians. And every day you walk, you hear people talk about their own suffering. And a lot of the suffering comes from the cost of living and apart from the cost of living. We are suffering because every time we step out of the house, we are conscious and afraid that we may not come back to see our children, that we may receive a stray bullet. Crime in this country is at an unprecedented level of danger. And the Democratic Labour Party pledges that we will implement, pass laws, and respect the police service in a manner that crime will have to be reduced in this country. Because it is our position that government is not doing enough to reduce crime. It is our position that government is making criminal activity acceptable. And I don't say that because it sounds good. I say that based on the evidence, and not the circumstantial evidence, but the direct evidence that I'm going to give you. Because when I attacked the peace program in Parliament during the estimates debate, a minister of the government got up and said, don't mind him, they're into lick and lock up, and lick and lock up done with. So men can commit crime in this country, men can commit murder in this country, and men may be rewarded with a transaction on the principle, according to that minister, that lick and lock up done with, and that we have to cease this obsession with licking and locking up people. Barbadians, that is the country in which you live at present. You live in a country in which the government takes the official position from behind the microphones of Parliament that men who are engaged in criminal wrongdoing are not necessarily subject to criminal sanction in the courts, that they will leave them on the streets, that they are quite willing to give them $8,000 a month to do whatever they want to do with it, and when they don't get it anymore, they go on the front page of the nation and complain. That's the country we live in. There's a certain disorder that attends life in Barbados, and the government has sponsored a lot of it. And we are deeply concerned about that. We in the Democratic Labour Party offer Barbadians an alternative. We offer the alternative of returning this country by dint of hard work and over a period of time. It's not going to be overnight, but returning a certain social order to this country, apart from which we speak of moral decay. And there is a moral decay that is so evident among our youngest children. You all saw the videos last year, and it distresses us. It distresses us what young people have come to. I call it, there's a spiritual darkness that hovers over this country. And the government cannot claim that it is distant from the spiritual darkness that is invading the lives of our youngest children. Something is happening, and something is happening very badly. And we are accusing this government of sponsoring all of that. This government intends to take responsibility for nothing. It starts everything and finishes nothing. This Democratic Labour Party is coming to you, Barbadians, with the offer of change and the offer of fundamental change. This place has changed too much. And if Barbadians who are interested in the lives and the futures of their youngest children, if they maintain that interest, you cannot similarly be interested in keeping this Barbados Labour Party in office.
Right.
They have to go. And all of the evidence accumulates against them in support of our charge that they must go. And we are asking Barbadians to be wary of padding the voters list. We're asking Barbadians to be wary of bringing labor here, foreign labor, and even students now we hear are being registered as Barbadians. We are suspicious that all of these initiatives are intended to make up ground for lost votes, and that when the election comes, the government may find itself padding the voters list with people who do not ordinarily live here. Barbadians, please continue to support the work of your forefathers. Please continue to secure the futures of your children. Please join your efforts in removing this illegitimate government from office. I want to thank all who have sat with me here.
Wow. I mean, I don't even have words to express listening to the leader of the opposition. And it's not a matter of supporting or not supporting a party. These are facts. I have heard it said we are entitled to our own opinions, but we are not entitled to our own facts. Let me welcome Maxine. It's a pleasure to have you on with me tonight, a privilege I periodically get every now and again. But I have been listening to you. You're muted. I have been listening to you on a number of the other shows. Much of your enlightening information, particularly I was keenly interested in your assessment of the Prime Minister's travel. And I listened carefully. I listened very carefully, also from my own experience. And I did some calculations, and I must say that I can't, there's certain language you cannot use in Parliament. So I cannot sit here and call the Prime Minister a liar. But certainly on the basis of cost factors, there is a concern with regards to the truth. And Mr. Strawn makes that even more evident. Welcome to the show tonight.
Thank you very much to you and to Victor. I listened to the press conference today, and I listened carefully again just now, and I trust Barbadians are listening. So hello to diverse.
And we want them to call in tonight, please. They're going to have the number back up there again, 236-7000. This is your time. We have just a little over 30 minutes. We went a little longer into the time because we wanted you to hear information. And I am being very careful when I say this because, Maxine, sometimes people get so inundated with party that they don't pay attention to truth and to facts. And that's what I listened to. I listened carefully to his assessment as it related to this bank. And it is deeply troubling and deeply concerning, and it ought to be for every Barbadian. So please give your calls, 236-7000. They had it up a few moments ago. Maxine is here, Victor here, I am here, and we will engage you. We are certainly happy to hear your concerns and your questions. So please, 236-7000. Maxine, your thoughts.
Well, I am very concerned. I think anybody who listened to this, if they didn't get a chance to listen to anything, listen to what you were discussing this evening. And Cammy says I was militant last night. I told him it was another M in my name. I became MMM. Can you hear me?
Yes.
But
yes,
what is frightening is that Barbadians are being treated with disdain. That's the only word I can use. We are being treated with disdain. Mm-hmm. I tell people, and I said it last night, I believe I'm a Pan-Africanist at heart. I have followed this bank, and there may be concerns, but it operates across 52 countries on the continent. Why is it that a bank that is worth more than the GDP of this country? Let's put it into context, because when you look at the equity and so on, and probably the kind of projects that it has financed, it can buy and sell Barbados. In the context of what we're saying, I think that's a reasonable expression to use. Not that we have a sale, but so I would have seen this as an opportunity to invest the land. It has a value. And that can be put into it is not a Caribbean bank. You know, it's a profit-making bank. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
with significant shareholding, significant value, and the kind of projects that they finance are significant. And so I cannot understand the rationale. And it is unfortunate. I listened to Minister Strawn, and all I can do is shake my head. I listened to him.
Yep.
I've listened to most of them, and you know, and I will move away a bit from the bank as I look at Mrs. Amoy Gilding Bourne sitting next on the left of Mr. Thorne. On the afternoon that he had finished his presentation on Wednesday, you would have seen images of him going through Swan Street, etc. And while we were walking, somebody called one of the group to say that the Minister of Agriculture was in Parliament. I would call it defaming Mrs. Gilding Bourne. And my question is, you have 30 minutes as an MP. Why would you use those time, those minutes,
Okay, you have nothing to say.
thing, rather than talk about your plans for agriculture? You know, and the obnoxious thing about it is you're using the cover of Parliament. If he stepped outside on Swan Street and stood next to her or anybody and repeated those things, her lawyers probably would have written him a long time ago, you know? And so it pains me that we have so many members of Parliament, and all that they can do, I'm sure almost every last one. I decided not to waste my time to listen. I would listen to summaries carried in the press or whatever, because I don't have time to pollute my ears and my system with that kind of thing. It is disgusting. And it was like person after person doing it. And that really, and you know, the unfortunate thing is that those people to whom the Prime Minister moves around the world talking are listening.
Yes, right.
You get feedback from outside of Barbados. I have friends across Africa. I have a roommate she and I would have been roommates when I was a graduate student. She doesn't live in Africa right now. She hasn't lived in Africa for many years. She goes back and forth. But these are people who send me things about Barbados. You know, I don't know what Victor thinks, but I don't know if you've gotten any calls. I guess you will get a signal when if we have it. But Victor, I mean, when you think about this, it is as if, I mean, they're behaving like juvenile. I mean, I wouldn't want to say juveniles because we got responsible juveniles, you know?
You know, it just really puzzled me when I heard Mr. Thorne said that the Prime Minister called the Auditor General on Sunday. You know, I mean, how worse can it get? You know, and then you
remember
just
Good Friday,
Huh?
Good Friday, that infamous call on a Good Friday.
Mm-hmm. You know, it is so. Yeah, I mean, is that disrespectful? The Auditor General of all people, who ought to be totally independent to do his duties and should in no way demonstrate any kind of affiliation, but he gets a call from the Prime Minister of all people, and then she calls herself a leader, again seeking to usurp her authority on the Auditor General.
It is beyond amazing. But again, it really speaks to how the Prime Minister manages and operates, because I will give you an example. Many people, when I was a member of cabinet, many people kept complaining about the tardiness of the judiciary and would say to the Prime Minister in conversation. And the Prime Minister, this is Prime Minister Stewart, always reminded them that it would have been inappropriate for him to stand up in Parliament and undertake or commence a criticism of the judiciary. I remember on one occasion when I believe it would have been the Attorney General made a comment, and there was a comment in Parliament in return. But the recognition was there's a separation of powers. And the way to go is not as a member of Parliament or a member of cabinet to get and do that. I mean, I think Mr. Thorne also made reference to the interrogation of the Commissioner of Police. about his methods of policing or the strategies to deal with pre-deal larceny.
But he was seen within Parliament, and I heard Mr. Thorne said that he had no right in there.
No, he does
no
not.
right period, because again, his office is independent. He should show no political affiliation. Period. Of all places, Parliament, don't invite me there. Let's have a meeting at my office.
I was looking to see if I had the Constitution in front of me, but if we look in the Constitution, we will see where the roles of these people. Sorry, Pastor Ferdinand, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, Maxine, go ahead, please.
No, I was saying, if we look at the Constitution, I was looking to see if I had a copy in front of me, so I didn't have to move, but I had it somewhere around here. If you look into the Constitution, it speaks to these things. And when you start to see the head of government, because remember, that's what the Prime Minister is. She's the head of government. There are clear roles for our head of state, which is our president. And within that frame, that's why we have an auditor general, is, as you said, is those things are established by law. And the Constitution speaks to a lot of these things. And you ignore that. You're essentially thumbing your nose at these things and saying, I do not care about what the rules say.
Maxine, let me ask a question of you. When elections are over, persons go to which is now the president's residence, and they're sworn in. I believe and you make a commitment to uphold the Constitution of the country, if my observations are correct. What happens when a member of Parliament, regardless of their status, Prime Minister, Attorney, I don't care, what happens when they are in violation of that Constitution to which they swear? Is there any authority vested anywhere that can sanction them with regards to that?
I would have to go and read. I cannot off the top of my head say, and what I will tell you is something I would investigate. But what really happens there is I would really have to investigate it, because
that's fine.
Purposes, once they've been elected, there's no power of recall, no provision for recall either by citizens or but that's an important issue, because at the end of the day, by acting in ways that are contrary to the provisions of the Constitution and the expectations of how you function, you are really doing
violation.
Yeah, you're doing damage to the systems that make us the country that we're supposed to be.
You see, the thing is that I made a note with regards to the attitude toward the leader of the opposition. Now, I have tried over my life to be as objective as I can be. Sometimes I'm good at it, sometimes I'm not good at it. I engage conversations with persons. And there are times, there's an old saying my mother always used to tell me, pick your battles, be careful, as it relates to that. But I made a note here, because it is a biblical thing I see. When you can't defend or attack the message, you go after the messenger. Attempt to discredit the credibility of the messenger, for if you are able to do that successfully, you really damage the message. Which is what I observed throughout the debates. There was a concerted effort to undermine the integrity of the leader of the opposition, from where he lived, and I think I heard you from where he grew up, I believe it is, and I think I heard you address that matter, up to the point of him charging $140,000, I think it is, for a case that he engaged. What does that have to do with the budget? You are supposed to be given an account of your stewardship, and I'm looking for figures, Maxine. When I hear all this stuff, I am asking. The Prime Minister referred to obtaining grants, and I think I heard you touch on this. I want to know how much, because grants carry conditions. Bajans seem to think that grants, you just get money, you can do what you. No, I have been involved in this matters for some time as a non-profit individual in several different areas. And people who give philanthropically have told me straight to my face, we will give, but this must not be handed to the government. That's a condition. It's a grant, but it's a condition. So I want to know, you talk about all these grants. I think it was 140 something $million of grants or something like that. I want to know, what are the conditions? I want to know what those grants, how many different grants you got to accumulate that amount. What were those grants given for? What has happened to those grants since they have been divested or disbursed to you as a country? Those are answers you must give the people of this country.
No, you're correct. Victor, before I comment, you wanted to comment on that. I think you were saying something before, but I'll come back to that, Pastor Ferdinand.
You know, my concern here is, right, that as the Auditor General, in his professional position, he completes a document. And note the word complete. That is the completed document. When a request is made by the Prime Minister for you to submit this as a draft or to put on it incomplete, are you asking the Auditor General to tell a lie?
But I don't know. What I can say is it is unusual because my interaction with the Public Accounts Committee and therefore the Auditor General is that you receive a document, it is laid in Parliament, and it is discussed and so on. You have special audits which are requested. In the case of Hope, that would have been an obvious request for a special audit. And in fact, when you talk about auditing, I mean, it is unusual, I would say, Victor.
Mm-hmm.
And
so when you challenge me to change the status of my document from what I conclude in my office, to be honest to the people of Barbados, and you're asking me to do something contrary to that.
The basic thing is the Auditor General is not answerable to the Prime Minister or anybody, to the extent that the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee sets an agenda and so on. And Mr. Thorne explained it properly in terms of how either the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, the Prime Minister, or Parliament as a collective can initiate work to be done by the Auditor General by making requests, and he spoke to the procedures for doing that. What the Prime Minister, and I've been using this expression quite frequently recently, to explain is to expose. And I think in speaking last night, the Prime Minister has exposed to the Barbados and the world that what she sought to do was contrary to what is supposed to be the norm. But I want to go back to the point that Pastor Ferdinand raised about receiving grants and so on. These things are done. I mean, when I heard the Prime Minister, in fact, I heard Senator Ryan Walters today, and I have to go back and listen. In fact, I will request from him the information because I think he listed out the amounts of grants received. I think he was looking at some particular report, the Central Bank report. Now, like you and like many Barbadians who called me when somebody decided to circulate a voice note of mine in a chat, I have a difficulty with the notion that people don't respect the boundaries of the chat. But also in the comment I said I didn't mind people hearing it. I didn't necessarily mind them hearing what I said, but if people want to circulate it, I didn't abuse anybody other than to describe somebody in a term that I think is based on what I saw the person write about me, because she was speaking of collectively. But the important point was that Senator Walters listed that. The Prime Minister gave a number. She, as you say, she didn't indicate when, what purpose, etc. But the other thing that is critical there, and I would want to hear your response, gentlemen. Why is the Prime Minister going around the world, and I'm repeating something I said last night, 2020 was COVID lockdown. 2021, my recollection was there was very little world travel. And certainly my recollection was that members of government, if any, traveled, there would have been extremely few persons. Why is the Prime Minister, with a massive set of responsibility within the ministries and agencies and departments that fall under her, whether as a Minister of Finance, Prime Minister's Office, etc., why is she so often away? And if you're saying you brought these things home, is that why you went? Couldn't you give instructions to your ministers? Because these loans would have fallen under matters relating to bilateral grants from, let's say, UAE, China, wherever. You have a foreign minister, you have, if they're related to agriculture, you have Minister of Agriculture, you have tourism, why aren't they allowed to function? That's micromanaging. Is that the best use of time? Is that facilitating the making of the best kinds of decisions as to the running of this country, given your position of Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, as well as the other things?
Well, Maxine, I have a view on this, because she has been more the poster child for climate change globally than she has been the Prime Minister of Barbados.
Okay.
I have watched several of her speeches and contributions from the UN and in several other international agencies in which she's speaking concerning the matter of climate change. I'll reserve any comment where that is concerned. But I have asked repeatedly, and I'm sure you've heard me on this show, asked repeatedly, what benefit to Barbados has been all of these trips? I mean, if you are traveling 93, I did a lot of traveling as a part of Dr. Holmes Williams's team, Maxine, and we had something like 16 crusades a year outside of Barbados. Now, in a 12-month year, that could mean like 2 a month. All right. Now you travel 93 times. I'm taking it in the last financial year. I'm taking the last financial year. You have traveled 93 times. I only traveled 16, and I have occupied a whole year. You've traveled 93 times. How much time have you spent on the ground in this country addressing the aspects of business that the people elected you as the government to do here in Barbados? That's one of the questions I would ask. As I've asked before, what is the benefit to Barbados? You're going around, and it's almost embarrassing, Maxine, because I'm tending to think that based on the associations I have seen her with, that she is asking for financial assistance, whether it be within the aspect of climate change, fossil, what you call this again now, where you're trying to redirect energy from fossil
energy, renewable energy.
The whole aspect of renewable energy, all the rest of it. Of course, I was of the opinion that there were financial institutions available to the government to engage those kind of aspects. I'm not an expert at it, but I was of the opinion there was. And if you're traveling around the world, and if you're speaking, of course, we don't know what she's obtaining from speaking. I can tell you that if the President of the United States of America flies into Grand Cayman to speak for 10 minutes in Grand Cayman, that is $40,000 paid to him, not to the government of the United States. So is she benefiting financially from this? I am not accusing her of anything. Don't get me wrong. I don't want anybody to say that I have said, because I'm being very careful with my statements, because I don't want to expose Marcia to anything. But these are the kind of questions, Maxine, that are rising in my mind. And as you have said, what's the role of the ministers?
And they're
what
not
is the role?
There are a lot of them.
Well, you got 20-something ministers, the largest cabinet this country has ever had.
Ever.
And I am thinking, okay, you have something going on in Dubai. Where's the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, where that is concerned?
Oftentimes, now stick a pin right there, because you just remind me. You would notice that the Minister of Foreign Affairs travels, and this has happened, I mean, depending on the meetings, the Minister of Foreign Affairs travels with the Prime Minister in a lot of instances. Now the question is, if you're going to get funds, because I think that's what she was saying. She came back with these funds. Is that what you were going for? Why didn't you let him go by himself? You know, I mean, I spoke about the presentations at the United Nations and the kind of traditions that other countries observe. But, you know, the thing is that when you juxtapose this argument, and some of our colleagues sought to defend it, against the continued failure to implement projects properly, to do things backward. I mean, it may be deliberate in terms of, because one of the things, and I'm gonna flag it here if we don't have any callers. You know,
I just want to remind them. Thanks for just mentioning that. Sorry to cross you, but I just want to remind them to call. You know, I mean, this is your time, folk of the loyal opposition. This is your time to call in. You know, we will continue the discussion until we see a call from you. So don't think that we're not awaiting your calls. We are awaiting your calls, 236-7000, for your concerns, your questions. But we will continue to converse until we see that call come up. So please don't hesitate. Just get on the phone, get on the line, and give us your calls. Yeah, go ahead, Maxine.
Yeah, I'm gonna look. I'm looking at something that was sent to me by several people today, and I'm gonna read it. It says, "I note with interest that the government of Barbados plans to relocate." So the question I'm asking, are these things? Is this true? What I'm reading. Is it true that the government of Barbados plans to relocate the District C police station from Parish Land St. Philip to 6 Roads in the same parish? And the note went on to explain why that perhaps makes no sense. It said, in its present location, the station has a panoramic view of the southern part of the island and also overlooks the prison at Dodds. In addition, it lies in close proximity to the parish of St. John, which incidentally is the only parish without a police station. My concerns are as follows. 1, 6 Roads is congested with all of the recent commercial developments. 2, the present location is a strategic one since the station also serves the parish of St. John. 3, what are the plans for the site at Parish Land, which is a prime location? The government needs to address the third concern immediately in light of what has happened to government lands at Holetown, St. James, and Gemmott'S Lane, St. Michael. Is this another case of a prime location being given away? Question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. We need to know now. Now that is worrisome, because from what we see when these things are brought to our attention, it has already happened. I think, Victor, you might be able to speak to this, the location maybe of the police station, and then you know, I don't know, Pastor, if you heard about that.
I received it this evening as well, Maxine, and I do know the station. It is strategically located. It is I mean, you would want it for a property. Let me put it that way. It's a gorgeous view. Gorgeous view. And very strategic.
Apart from the view,
very strategic.
Apart from the view, that location also gives rise to the ability for communication, not only video communication, but you know, I worked in the telecommunications department of the police force, you know, for years, and when you see those masts that we have up there, we have communication also with the regional security system from that location, you know. So that particular point is just not one of view. When you go up there to District C, it's a wonderful view. But when it comes to security of Barbados and security regionally, that position is an excellent location in terms of transmission of signals. So that is why that was utilized. And you just can't afford now to move that from there, because of course, yes, communication systems would have changed significantly. Rather at that particular time we were analog, but you know, with the digital systems now in place, well, it's far more advanced. Nevertheless, the argument still holds the same, that in terms of transmission of signals, that particular location is
very strategic,
prime, and we just can't afford, you know, with this attitude towards governance, that I am in control. You know, I can get you to change that document and put draft on it or incomplete. I will move the police station from there and relocate it. You know, that kind of attitude towards Barbados. You know, we have become very vulnerable when we realize that one person in this country calls all the shots. We're in trouble.
Yeah, you know, it's very troubling. I raise the matter of the view, Victor, because in terms of moving it and divesting of it, because I can't see a rationale, because I know the station. I pass that station every time I'm going to Bushy Park, every time. And when you pass that station, you get down to the bottom of the hill. You go right, you go to Dodge, you go left, you go out to the YWAM and all out that side, out to, I think it's what, Thickets or King George V Memorial Park, somewhere out there. You go back through St. John, you go out through Guinea and back up through Messiah's Street and you know, Messiah's house and so on up in there. It's very, very strategically located. As a matter of fact, on a couple of occasions where there have been a problem or two in the St. George area, there has been a response, in some instances quicker from that district, District C. It is, I think it's District C, yeah, District C, than we have had from the one on Horse Hill, which, you know, when you look at a place like Market Hill, you know, and Bourne's Village and so on, the one at St. Joseph is closer, but
And
we have seen.
you can dispatch so much easier.
Oh yes,
far more efficient from that current location at District C that you can even think about. When you go down and you're thinking about six roads.
Six roads. You'll be there in the bottom of an island.
You're looking for trouble. You know, anything of urgency cannot be, you know, fully policed by individuals from 6 roads.
But it's similar to when they.
Disaster. But
it's similar to when they had, I can't remember if it was the Department of the Emergency in Warrens, you know, in there by in One Accord Plaza, down inside. That's one of the most difficult places to get out of when you have traffic, you know.
Yeah,
you know, when the other day I went to go through 6 roads and it took me nearly 15 minutes to get through. Now I know you guys have your sirens and everything, but still, on the basis of physical space, a vehicle can't move where a vehicle can't move. So you could find yourself delayed, you could find yourself hindered for an emergency. So even getting out, you know, it just does not make sense. But then again, I must confess, there doesn't seem to be a lot that this government is doing that makes sense. Maxine,
I'm just here reading. I mean, I like Marcia, and I'm sure y'all would do. I'm now getting some notes here. Somebody is saying that they're hearing that parts of the pond site and Wellington Street will be relocated. Now the question is to where? Highway 7 will go inland by traffic lights at Beckles Hill. They're talking about, you know, new hotel.
What, you mean you're not going to have a road coming down Bay Street to go into Bridgetown?
They say, well, let me just read these 3 forwards. The first one says, hearing parts of the pond site and Wellington Street will be relocated. Just like Beckles Hill, where the geriatric hospital and all those houses will be removed after the new geriatric hospital on the highway is finished. Highway 7 will go inland by the traffic lights up Beckles Hill, cross behind government headquarters and back to Highway 7 by Shell Banyans. New hotel and conference center right smack in the middle of the old Highway 7 and the Esplanade.
I mean, that is insanity.
What they're doing. So we have turned Barbados, or the Prime Minister has, because to me it sounds as though all of these things are done deals. So we're turning Barbados now into the playground for whom?
The rich and the famous.
You know? And you cannot replace these things. I worked in government headquarters for 11 months. And as I say to people, very often when I stop to eat something, or at this time of year when the sky is blue and the water is brilliantly blue, I would open the curtains to my office so that I could look across the street, because I was on the 3rd floor of government headquarters. And it is such a beautiful sight.
Absolutely.
When you put a big hotel there, what are you doing? Apart from the fact that you are creating all of these rooms, you are destroying the very things that people enjoy. and no conversations have been had with the citizens. And there's this mad rush to get it done, so that by the time you start excavating and destroying, it is already gone. I remember, and I've said it on this program more than once, I was born in Black Rock, a few hundred yards from Paradise Beach Club. And I will never forget the day I drove down Black Rock on my way home, past my house, and I saw the clearing that was Paradise Beach Club and so on. And it dawned on me, if I lie, I die, as the old people say. I said to myself, suppose this thing never gets finished. And look at what we have now. That was 2006. That's almost 20 years ago. And we're still here grappling with that.
You still have incomplete buildings down there. Maxine, that was my account. When I was with Canada House, working with Steve Hinks and in chemical industry, that was my account, Paradise Beach. And I used to drive down in there for lunch, I used to buy my lunch and drive down. You could drive down. Yes. If my memory serves me correctly, you could drive down you could almost drive in the sea. You could drive down and just sit down under the shade of the trees and relax for a few minutes and have your lunch. Mm-hmm. Yes. And I want to ask you, you're far more experienced in terms of governmental matters. I want to ask a couple of questions of you if I can. And there would be if you can't answer them, that's fine. As the leader of the opposition was speaking, because I was thinking, he made the mention of the fact that when that property, which I must confess, as I drive past there one day, I looked at my daughter and I said, that won't be a bad place to put a hotel. That's the old Ministry of Health, which is what I am thinking they're talking about. That's the property of my mind. Is that the property they're talking about, the old Ministry of Health?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I said to her, that would be a nice place to put a hotel with a walk over the road, a bridge going over the road, which I have seen done in Grand Cayman. Where Dart, I think his name is Dart. He's done a walk over the highway from his facility over to his new hotel and so on. And I thought, that'd be a lovely place to put a hotel because it's just dilapidated, and I'm wondering what the government is doing with all these properties. I didn't know that this was in the offing because he's talked about the fact that when it's complete, it's going to be valued at millions of dollars, which does not belong to Barbadians. And I want to ask this question. What will be the status of the employees of that bank? Will they be given immunity? Will they have diplomatic status? Will they be considered as an international entity? What is it?
Those are things. But first of all, let me say that over the years, there's been discussions about having a hotel or something, development on that property. Like you, it is not something that we should just pretend wasn't considered. But it's more what is being done with the land. Now, that status would have to be negotiated and legislation passed to give them that. It is not. And I think we heard, again, Mr. Thorne, who would have been able to speak to that pretty definitively about the CDB. I remember having discussions about other international development agencies and what privileges and immunities they would have been given. So this is not something automatic. It is not the same kind of institution. And if that is being offered or considered, those things should be put out there because it would have to go to Parliament and discussed. And I will say this, even if they contemplate that, before we get there, let us talk about the land. You understand what I'm saying? Because
yes, absolutely.
Before you get there to say we're going to do this or whatever, why are you giving away land? And when you look at some of the engagements, the business transactions that have taken place between the that bank, I'm tying up my tongue. Export,
I know.
I will call it in the law is export import because it deals with commercial transactions and so export and import facilitating those things. When we look at the transactions that have taken place in Barbados today, and we look at who would have been the whose businesses or which businesses, who's in terms of owners, which by name. When we look at those things, it makes you go, because there seems to be very interesting. I'm choosing my words carefully because I ain't in Parliament, see? So I don't want Marcy's program. But there's an interesting relationship and a very small catchment group of individuals who seem to be benefiting. So it really makes you ask yourself, is the Prime Minister and Cabinet in agreeing to this, what really informed their decision to do this? And are you really looking at this in as objective a manner as possible? And are you taking into consideration what is of maximum benefit for the people? Are you concerned about how it benefits the people? Or are you concerned about doing something, a quid pro quo? Let me put it like that.
Another interesting relationship, Maxine and Dr. Ferdinand, another interesting relationship that, we can ponder on is the idea of the cybercrime bill being passed in this country. Not only the cybercrime bill being passed, but when it had to go back, the information that they came back with was far more severe than the original bill. So now we realize that all these plans, now that they're evolving, we can now see why the need for a cybercrime bill of that nature. Because this program, along with so many people, have so much to say about what we are experiencing now, that the mobilization of that perceived cybercrime bill would have shut all of us up. We would not have been able to speak.
And that is why we went to the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. That's why we went, because we saw that threat. But let me say this very quickly, Maxine, here's one of my concerns, and you can tell me if it's a legitimate one or not. You get free land, you build your bank, you build your conference facility or whatever you care to do, whatever it is you're doing. And then let's just say, for argument's sake, you determine, well, we need to probably reposition and relocate ourselves in another location. It's going to cost the taxpayers of Barbados a fortune to repurchase that property. Or is that property going to be divested to then some other international entity, who can afford, obviously, to pay for it? I mean, these are questions.
You gave me the land. I built my building. The land and the building belong to me to do whatsoever I please with it. Unless you can show me a contract which says, because we gave you the land, before you can do X, Y, then, the Prime Minister didn't specify any terms or conditions of giving the land. The land was given free, and it was reinforced by I have to go and find a clip from Minister Strawn when he was wrapping up, because he made some comment about history, and in other words, he was negating the significance and importance of our history and our heritage, and talking about we need to get money. Now we need to get money, but have we not been saying as people in this country, as policymakers, as teachers, whatever, that we need to diversify this economy?
Well, I tell you, guys, we could go on developing this for the entire night.
That is true.
As you know, no, it is really quite serious. It is really quite serious, and I don't know if Barbadians are taking our Reverend Dr. Rogers's statement seriously and waking up. But I want to remind us again of the upcoming march this coming Saturday, and it will be commencing at the Folkestone beach and going to the Holetown Civic Center. That will be at 10 o'clock. It begins at 10 o'clock. And it's not just Holetown that we will be addressing. There are a number of other issues, as you can see from the flyer there on the screen. We'll be looking at Oystons, JEMMOTT'S Lane, Gibbs's Gully, Screw Dock, privatized paradise, the land grab. All of these are things that we'll be engaging. There'll be different persons, I imagine, that will be speaking there. And we want to invite you to be a part of, listen, folk, this is important. This is important. And there is an old saying, there's a biblical saying, you say you have faith, show me your faith by your works. It's not enough to come on here, make your comments, support. I mean, I saw we were up nearly 1,150 something people here. Now, give you grant, I understand there are a couple of persons who are overseas, but certainly I want to believe that the majority of the people who are on this show tonight are here on the ground in Barbados. And we are going to invite you to join us this coming Saturday at the Folkestone Beach, where we will begin our march to Holetown Civic Center at 10 o'clock. Please do not forget this. Do not take this for granted. We are going to close the session tonight. I don't know if I should risk giving you all final words, I believe, because to be honest with you, we can kick into gear for another hour to 2 hours. Not just on this, there's so many things. Maxie, I'll tell you, I've been around politics for a little bit, not as much as you, not as actively engaged as you are. And I can tell you, this is troubling because I now have grandchildren. And I hesitate to use the word frightened, but I am deeply concerned as to what heritage I'm leaving for them or is being left for them to have to cope with. And we are all gone. I am not in the departure lounge. I can see that you are not either. I know Victor is not, and the leader of the opposition definitely is not in the departure lounge. So I want to make sure that we get everybody there on Saturday to be a part of this march.
I will be there,
and I will be there. And Victor, I'm looking for you.
Well,
I'm looking for you.
God willing, I will be there. I have something in the afternoon, but I will be there in the morning.
But I you know, when people tell me that, Maxine, I always say he's willing. Well, listen, guys, thank you so much for being here, Victor. Abraham, who was on earlier, Rose, who was on as well. She's not the 100%, but I want to thank her as well for coming on and sharing early in the show. It was a great night again. We had a large number of people viewing tonight, but we as what is he saying, all good things must come to an end, I think it's the saying. And it's 10:08, and I want to respect the time, your time, in the loyal opposition. We want to respect your time as well, because some of you have to go to work in the morning and you need to be able to get up, and some people in the other parts of the world that are well into the morning all late now. So Dave, I'm going to turn it over to you to close. I believe you have a clip with Mr. Thorne, and then I understand there's a new song. That I tried to get a glimpse of it last night, but I understand there's a new song. So I will leave you to close out the night, Dave. God bless you all. Thank you, all of you on the loyal opposition, for being here tonight. We could not have done this without you. We appreciate all of your comments, all of the comments you made here. A little disappointed you didn't call, because that's so important for you to do. Make sure you get on the phone and call when these opportunities arise. So God bless. Have a great night. Dave, over to you.
The courts have recognized that these developments on lands of this nature should not be done unless the people have fair right of audience with the government by way of a town hall meeting. And all that is going on at Holetown over the past few days, precipitated by a young lady expressing her view in the Senate. And one should not comment on the business of the other place, but it was that speech that precipitated the protests. She was acting too. She was dramatic too. Was she insincere? And this government continues. This government continues to act in defiance of legitimate public interest in this country.
To resign when principals do not align. Marsha say what? To resign They have reached such a point. Galam. They have reached such a point. Galam. They have reached such a point. Galam, 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 galam.
I received a letter from the Honorable Marcia Cattle asking to be relieved of her duties with immediate effect.
And she was removed.
With immediate effect.
She was removed.
Can we save some of it for us?
No.
Save some of it for us?
A long strips, a short strips, a flat strips, a big strips. No.
We have spoken a lot about heritage. Right now, there's a simple obelisk standing in commemoration of the landing to tell the story of the site. Not just of English settlement, but the story of the Amerindian community who were here before all of us, our indigenous population who were decimated.
No.
I understand that there's tremendous economic value for any beachfront in Holetown, but can we save some of it for us?
No.
Even if we don't.
No.
Barbie.
What you say?
Wall to wall to wall.
No.
Wall to wall to wall.
A big strips.
Wall to wall to wall.
No.
Wall to wall to wall.
A big strips.
Money, money, money. I want money, money, money. I want money.
You're fired.
I want money.
Get out of here.
Money, money, money. I want money, money, money. I want money.
You're fired.
I want money.
Get out of here.
When principals do not align, Marcia say what? To resign. When principals do not align, Marcia say what? To resign. They have reached such a point. Galam. They have reached such a point. Galam. They have reached such a point. Galam, 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 galam.
I think that we could do more.
I tell you, oh dear God.
I love the brown sheep with the black.
Well, I mean, they have some of my favorite characters from Sesame Street, Froggy and Miss Piggy and all that, I tell you. Listen, for God bless you guys.
Have a
You
good
know,
night.
thank you, Dave.
And
Thank you,
members of
Dave.
the loyal opposition.
Yes.
Rest well, everybody.
And I thank Dave for giving us a little laughter after all the seriousness of the evening. Thank you, Dave. God bless you guys.